Okay, it's a little bit after 9 on the East Coast, and I appreciate you guys being patient with us tonight. We had a little bit of technical difficulty getting set up, but we are here in the ShopTalk Studios, Cycle Source Magazine headquarters. I'm Chris with Cycle Source Magazine. I'm your host here on the East Coast, and I'm joined by my partner, Ken Connie in Colorado. Ken, what's up, buddy?
What is up, man? I just want to say thanks for all your hard work because you busted your ass, and it was a little hairy there for
This
a
one,
few
this one
minutes,
was
but
crazy for
we're
a
up and
minute. It
going.
was.
Really, kind of a somber evening, but also
It
really
is.
excited to have our guests on and really celebrate a man who meant a lot to a lot of people in this industry. So, yeah, I'm excited for the show tonight.
Yeah, me too. It was last week we got the very sad news of the passing of Arlen Ness. Arlen was, I mean, many people have called him a god, the originator. He was as OG as it gets, and to celebrate this, I mean, we see all of the social media posts that are going on, and everybody's remembering him with their own story. And we thought that this was an opportunity to lend our platform to the whole industry and give some of his closest friends and family an opportunity to come on here and share their stories and deal with this incredible loss that we're all facing. So we're really happy to bring this to you, and it's a big honor for us.
Yeah, for sure. And I think, something that needs to be said as well is that, Russ Brown Motorcycle Attorneys is really making this possible tonight. They really stepped up. They're going to be our new studio sponsors. So this is actually presented by Russ Brown Motorcycle Attorneys. We're excited to have them on and
Yes,
helping us
sir.
out here. So,
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Very big work that we're doing here. So we're not gonna hold things up too long because we did start late and we have a lot of people coming on the show tonight, and I think we're gonna get right to it. Just to let you know, Heather is standing by. Heather's right off to the side here and ready to answer any questions or pass along any comments that you might have tonight. So feel free to reach out to her.
I will do my absolute best. They're actually pouring in right now, so I don't know that I'll be able to keep up with all of them. I don't like hearing my own voice, sorry. So as I was saying, they're pouring in, everybody paying their respects to the Ness family. So I hope they will, after this is over, go back and take a minute to read. I'm sure they will love to hear your messages. So please be patient, as I'm going to try not to break in too much with those, but we will address them as quickly as we can. I do want to thank Chop Cult. They're on hosting a watch party for
Oh,
this
right
show
on.
right now.
thanks.
So thank them for the support, and everybody else that is here to pay their respects to Arlen.
Yes, sir. So Ken, why don't you tell everybody about the first person that we have the privilege of bringing on tonight?
Kind of a surprise guest. We were really excited. Michael Lichter helped us do this. So we've got Corey Ness on, Arlen's son, and I got to interview Arlen and Corey probably about 4 years ago, 5 years ago, and I think we're going to get some great stories from a really different perspective. And it's a hard thing because he just lost his father, and at the same time, we're here to memorialize him. So I'm really excited to hear what he has to say today. So let's bring Corey Ness on.
Hello.
Hey Corey, how you doing, man? You're on the air with Chris and Ken.
Hey, Chris and Ken.
I guess first of all, man, I have to tell you thank you again so much for doing this. I know this is a really hard time for you and your family, and we super appreciate you spending some time with us to remember Arlen.
No problem. I'm honored to talk about my dad. So no problem.
Excellent. So I think actually Ken wanted to start this off. When we first heard that you were going to be coming on, Ken had a great question to ask you, and he's going to be our lead on this.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I just
Sounds
wanted to
good.
know about kind of that first bike build that you and your dad did and what that was like. I don't know if he can hear me because I
Oh.
can't hear him.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Ken asked he wanted to know the story of the first bike build that you and your dad did together.
Oh boy. I'd say the first bike we did was more maybe just me working in the garage, helping him with paint, things like that. But we didn't build too many bikes that we collaborated on too much. We both kind of did our own. So when I was building my first bike, my dad was over my shoulder, but he made me do everything myself. So I would get my hands dirty and learn what was going on.
Yeah.
And that was my first bike. My first Harley that I built was a 74 Sportster, and I was 15 years old.
So this is something we were talking about coming up to this show, is for all the people in the world that have their stories about, the time that they met your dad, or, things that they got to interact with, what would your life be today without the influence of this man?
Geez, that's a great question. I really have no idea, because he introduced me to motorcycles. It wasn't like, it was when I grew up, my dad worked on bikes and painted bikes in our garage at home. In fact, he would even sometimes, before getting the bike ready for a show, he would do final assembly in our front room of our house. So I couldn't really escape it too much,
Yeah.
But it was just kind of normal. But if my dad was not into motorcycles, I don't know what I'd be doing today. But I liked it, and joined in, and became a wonderful part of my life.
Yes, sir. So here's another thing that I have to ask you about this, with all of the insight that people have, and you hear about the amazing motorcycles, the amazing design, the stuff that you guys have done with Victory and Indian. It's such a library of works completed. There's a whole other side that we're finding as we get ready for this show about the kind of person that Arlen was. That was really like what put him over the top, beyond the talent and the accomplishments, was the man behind all of that.
Yeah, I think what's different about my dad than a lot of other guys is, first of all, my dad kind of stuck with it and was able to make a living doing it, for all those years. Even in the tough times, he kind of made it through, and he got, a lot of the magazines followed him quite a bit, and got his name out there, and people start noticing my dad. But he never really, he enjoyed it, and he liked people's response and everything, but it never went to his head. He just he was honored by people enjoying his work, and a lot of people don't do that all the time. They don't know how to handle fame a little bit. My dad was really good at that.
Yeah, I was actually on the phone with Mondo earlier from Denver's Choppers, and Mondo
Sure.
wanted to make sure that I passed on for him his condolences for the whole family, and
Thank you.
he actually had some questions he wanted to make sure we got on here tonight, and one was, will there be an open celebration of life for everybody to attend that might want an opportunity to say their goodbyes?
There will. We actually locked it down today. We don't have a whole lot of details, but it's going to be on April 27th, and we're working on the details, and we'll have it on our website, and we'll post things. But we may do a semi private get together with their family, and then a celebration for all of our friends and customers and so on the same day. So we're going to post that shortly, but it will be on April 27th.
Oh, right on. As we're talking here, Arlen Fatlin just posted, I miss Arlen, have so many great memories. And like Heather said, the comments that are pouring in already, we have a social media application up on the screen while we're talking.
Okay.
It's incredible. It's incredible.
Great.
But, the one other question Mondo wanted to ask about was, obviously he's thinking there will be something at the awards banquet in Sturgis this year, that there will be something special you guys will have for that as well.
We haven't thought that too far out yet. We're just trying to get past the first thing with a nice send off from my dad. But we could be doing something in Sturgis, but we're just kind of doing one step at a time.
Yeah, I imagine.
So, Corey, this is Heather. I just wanted to let you know I wasn't fortunate enough to know your father, but based on everything everybody says, he was an amazing inspiration to many, and I hope your family finds comfort in that.
Oh, I think I know he's inspired way more people than we ever thought. But the nice messages that we've received, on social media has been amazing, and I think it's really helped us get through this first part of realizing my dad's gone, my mom's husband's gone, and it just is. I think it's really helped. So far we've been pretty strong. I mean, it was a tough deal going through the at the end there. That was really gut wrenching. But we're so far we're real strong. My mom's been strong, and since she's strong, it's probably helping us out too. But yeah, the feedback we've got so far is we're shocked. It was we had over 5 million
That's
people
incredible.
on Facebook alone that saw our family post, and let alone everything on Instagram. And yeah, we were just kind of like, wow, it just made us feel warm inside. It was beautiful.
No, absolutely. So earlier today, you and I had an opportunity to talk, and we were talking about how men like your father, and the story behind a man who comes out of nowhere and has nothing but the drive and ambition to chase a dream like this. Those stories are really starting to disappear from our country today, and how this, even in our industry, this is such a rare and should be treasured thing, because now, 3 generations, and the company that Ness has turned into is incredible to think about those humble beginnings.
Yeah, no, it's a we're proud of the fact that we're 3 generations strong, and we're still doing good, and we still love what we're doing. We love riding motorcycles. We love designing parts. That we love going to events. We my riding to Sturgis. My dad did that over 40 times, and we were also fortunate enough that my 2 boys and myself, we all rode with my dad, at at least three or four times with both of my boys. So it was pretty, just pretty cool and great memories.
Yeah, that was we're super lucky to have Michael Lichter has given us just a complete library of pictures, and going through that, and combined with that, an interview that Ken had done with you and your father, and picking out some of those sound clips of that, the Sturgis trips, and the way you guys approached that, and how much, like, you could tell in his voice, and as we play these clips tonight, people would get an inside look at that. You could tell how much he just really, really reveled in the friendship and the camaraderie and the event of riding the motorcycle.
Oh no, he was a motorcycle guy, 100%. I mean, he was not into, when I was a kid, I was into sports like a lot of kids, and basketball and stuff, and he that wasn't his bag, man. He took me to a few games here and there, and I played some sports, but my dad was motorcycles 110%, and that's what he loved doing in his free time. That's what he did when he was working, and if we're now sitting down having dinner with the family, he'd be out in the garage, working on projects or painting bikes.
Right on. So let's go back. Let's go back in the beginning. Tell me some of the earliest memories you can remember from your dad and the bikes, and how things actually got started when you started to realize that this was the whole life, the whole package of what it meant to be in that family.
Well, probably, my dad, painting. He started to get the business going. He painted motorcycles, and he at first he didn't have a paint booth. It was our 2-car garage was our paint booth, and the garage door was cracked, to get out the fumes, and the neighbors never bitched, so that was good. And but my dad was just always working on bikes, and if you ever do any painting, it's not just about spraying. It's about sanding and
Oh my
Bondo
God, yeah.
and wearing your fingers out and stuff. And so my dad he was always working on paint jobs, and that's what paid the bills. He was a mailman for a little bit. He delivered furniture with his dad, and he was a carpenter for a while. But he finally got enough kind of paint work going that he decided to stick with that, and eventually he opened up a small little shop on East 14th Street in San Leandro, California, and he was just open from like 6 to 9 just so he can take in paint jobs, at nighttime, so people wouldn't come over to the house and want to talk and bullshit about motorcycles. He couldn't get any work done. So that's how that's kind of how he got rolling. And then eventually he started, people started noticing some of his bikes he had and started making some handlebars. And then someone asked, "Hey, can you make some for me?" And then before you know it, he's making a dozen, and kind of slowly snowballed.
Yeah, no, I can imagine that, knowing the business like I do of 2 decades of my part of it, but I know that there's some long hours too, and there's dark parts of it, man, where you wonder, where the next job's going to come from, and where it gets hard. I bet you, like, through the decades that your dad was in business, there had to be so much of that.
Oh yeah, my dad started with nothing, and it's even today, if you're a custom painter, it's you can make a living, but you got to be really good, and you probably do it for the love of it. But it's it's not easy. But yeah, he kind of made it through, and my dad saved his money and was real watched everything he spent, and just kind of slowly built things up, and he got lucky enough where it all worked out.
It's funny that you say that thing about it's hard to make a living as a painter today. And it was not long ago I was having a conversation with Dave, and he talked about the difference between, like back in the day you would say, yeah, I guess it'd be about this much to do a paint job. And when he finally got to a place in his career where he started to write down all the materials and all the time, and he realized that he was actually losing money on a lot of the paint jobs that he was doing, and that was a testament too of like the old days and the new ways and stuff, and what those guys had to contend with.
Yeah. You don't want to look at your hourly wage when you're painting. You just got to look at the job. It's too hard. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So, yeah.
Absolutely. So tons of social media going on. Heather, what do you got?
Tom Kiefer from Franklin Church Chopper says, "Corey, thank you so much for coming on and sharing with us. Arlen was always easily approachable and open to conversation. I will cherish our time together." Chris Summer Simmons, She's been on so much throughout this. She says, "We love you, Corey."
Thank you. Yeah, they're great, very nice people. All those people.
Oh, Ray from NorCal is coming in, and he just says lacquer. Like that's a reference back to the old days, boy.
Okay. Yeah, cool. Yeah, it's we've had just amazing response, and said it just warms my heart. It warms my family's heart, and I'm really proud of my father of what he accomplished in his time, and I'm most proud of 100% is, with all the nice comments that, there's always nice mentions about his work and being a pioneer in our industry, but it all comes back to he was a good dude and a nice guy, and that's what really warms our heart, and we're real proud, and that if you're gonna, when it's your time to go, if you leave with something like that, that's and you hear it 5,000 to 10,000 times in messages, it's like, you did pretty damn good.
Well, and I think it's a real testament too, when last year at the Quail, with I believe it was you and Zach and Arlen were all on stage up there. It was obvious, that he did a good job with you guys too. That those talents, not just with bikes, but also in the just living realm,
Being a person.
rubbed off on you guys.
Oh, thank you.
And it was great to see all those bikes in the same place, but it was great to see you guys all on the same stage as well. So, yeah.
Oh, thanks. Yeah. Yeah. Also too, my dad for the last, you know, 4 years and 3 months, he was dealing with cancer also. So,
Yeah.
that's what eventually took him out. And he was a trooper throughout the whole process. And he still came into work, majority of the time. He still rode his motorcycle up till probably, about 9 months ago. And even with 2017, he rode half the way to Sturgis.
Oh, right on.
And even though he was on chemo for over 4 years, and
Wow.
radiation a few times. And I remember we were somewhere about halfway there at a gas station, and all of a sudden I hear this as someone doing a big old burnout, and find out it's my dad, in the middle of nowhere.
That's great.
That's so great. That's so great.
That was pretty bitchin', pretty cool.
Yeah.
Man.
Well, fortunately, there's a ton of memories out there that everybody, I'm sure over the next while are going to be able to share with you, and, tons of footage, and, it certainly doesn't replace the man that he was, but there's a lot out there for you to kind of go back through when you're ready to do that, so that's always nice to think about.
Yeah, there's always, all the pictures and photo shoots and things over the years. It all means twice as much now, because it's much more things to, relive things of my dad. And even shows like this, we did a thing with Ken a couple of years ago, and, the couple TV things and other things that are available, but I can hear my dad talk again. There's
Right.
a lot of,
Isn't
there's
that
a lot
awesome?
of coverage out there.
That's the best
Yeah.
part of technology today, man, is that
Oh,
stuff is on record.
Oh, it's
sure.
great. It's great to have that as an option. You want to hear your dad talk again, man. There's a lot out there, so that's really, really nice.
All right, well,
Awesome.
Corey, listen, man, I know you have some obligations with the family tonight, and I apologize for our late start for the little bit of problem we had, but thank
No
you
problem.
so much, and just please pass on to the family our thoughts and prayers, and express how honored we are that we're able to do this small thing tonight, and try to, relive the memories.
Well, thank you very much, and like I said, anybody who's listening out there that sending messages, say that it all meant a ton to our family, and and I'm honored to represent our family and be able to talk about my dad, because he was a wonderful man, just a really, really good guy that happened to have a flair for playing with motorcycles and was able to make a living at it. But when the day is done, he was just a great, fun guy. And I'm lucky to have such a wonderful father.
Yes, sir. Well, we hope to continue to stay in touch with you, with the rest of your family too. I mean, talk about such a talented group of individuals. We hope to stay in touch with you through and beyond this, and any news that you have that, special things that are going on, pass them to us, and we'll make sure we get them out too.
Thank you. We'd love to. We'd love to.
All right. Thanks a lot, Corey.
Thanks,
Okay,
man.
guys. Thank you very much.
Good night.
While he's doing that, a message comes up from Howard Kelly, right? And Howard said something. I didn't get to read it. I was paying attention to the controls here, but Howard told me a story earlier that was absolutely priceless. He said, he just loved doing this stuff so much. He said, one time I went up there for something I was doing with Corey. He said, and I walked in, and out of the dark almost, Arlen came with a little push cart, and it had a shitty old iron head motor on it that was spray painted gold, and and he was like, hey, he said, what are you doing with that thing? And he goes, he said, I found this in the back somewhere. He said, I'm going to build it into something. And Howard was like, really, a shitty old iron head? He says, I like old iron heads. And he said, he says, Corey, know you're here? And he was like, yeah, he knows. He says, well, I'll talk to you later. We'll have lunch. And he just kind of disappeared back into the dark, So just loved it. What do you got, Blondie?
We have Bobby Colburn that just chimed in. The first time he met Arlen, he was about 10 years old, and he lived in the area of his first shop, and he rode up to it on his Stingray bicycle. And Arlen
Yeah.
came out and asked if he could help him. And he said, no, I'm just looking at the bikes through the window. And he invited him inside and treated him like he was his best friend, a 10-year-old boy.
Right? Then see, that's a good man.
Yep, absolutely.
So listen, just for those of you that this might be your first time tuning in, Shop Talk, what is it? This is once a week we get together, Ken, myself, Heather, my wife, and we go over the motorcycle news. We have some guests on, it's open conversation. We bring up social media like you see over here, and we let you guys participate.
And it's kind of a historical reference too, I mean, that's part of the reason why I went to go talk to Arlen and Corey, 4 or 5 years ago. I started doing a podcast and I wanted to capture motorcycle history. And I'm still even more fired up about that now. Just getting long form interviews. So that's part of this too, is, really capturing motorcycle history and talking to people that we value their input and where they're at in the industry. So.
Yes, sir. So you can tune in every week, Thursday, 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I can't promise you that it's going to be as, incredible a show as we have here tonight, but
it will be.
Usually pretty good. Usually not too bad. But hey, before we get our next guest on, who is the much fabled by story and song, Mr. Michael Lichter, Michael gave us some incredible pictures to work this show with, and we're going to take a minute here right now and several times throughout the show and play some of those for you. So enjoy these pictures by Michael Lichter.
I got married real young and right out of high school. And I was a mailman for a while, and then I was delivering furniture for a while. I'd bought a bike in probably 62 or 63, bought my knucklehead, and I had a little experience painting hot rods and stuff because I had hot rods before motorcycles. And then I was meeting more guys that had bikes and started painting their bikes, and I got busier and busier at home in the garage.
So the audio portion of that is exactly what we're talking about, the advantages of technology today. That was from Ken's interview. You can hear that whole interview with Arlen and Corey on forever2wheels.com. That's a number 4ever, number 2 wheels.com. But that's how lucky we are today, is that we can capture those moments in time, and you can go back and you can hear the voices, you can get the stories right from the person. It's an incredible thing. So with that, we're going to go on to the man himself. Why don't you tell everybody about Michael a little bit, Ken? You're probably one of the closest to him geographically and wherewithal.
Yeah, Michael and I have worked together for a while now. I believe one of the things we first worked on was actually Arlen's exhibit at the Journey Museum, that was kind of my first interaction with Timeless-Ness, and I couldn't believe that I was dealing with Timeless-Ness, to be honest with you. And he rolled in Smooth-Ness.
Yeah.
Still he has a lot of fantastic bikes, but that bike, for whatever reason, the Art Deco quality of it, and Lichter has taken so many pictures of Arlen. He did an entire book about him. If you haven't gone out and gotten one, you should. And he's a fantastic person as well as a fantastic photographer, and is really great at capturing those moments, as well as doing studio photography. So I'm excited to talk to Michael and hear some of the Arlen stories, because he's got some dating way back to I think he said 79, maybe something. Yeah, it's a ways. So
I hope somebody does, or Michael does, a book about Michael. I really, truly do. Because the stories this man has and the experiences he's had are just incredible. And he must do a story.
Yeah, that's no shit. That would be
And
a
he's
book.
also one of my favorite people. I absolutely adore Michael Lichter.
Which I'm starting to be suspect of a little bit, but
Christopher, I told you it's because he reminds.
Let's get Michael on. I'm going to ask him directly.
There's something about Michael that reminds me very much of my father. I don't know if it's his quiet mannerism or what it is, but he reminds me very much of my father, who was my best friend and my hero. So
let's try to get Michael on the line.
Hello.
Hey, Michael, you're live with Chris, Ken, and Heather.
Hey, if you don't hear me that well, you may want to call the studio number.
You want me to call the studio?
It's all right.
It's
Up to you.
Oh, it's good. We can hear you real
it
good.
sounds perfect.
Yep.
All righty.
So we were just sharing the fact that my lovely wife has an abnormal attraction to you.
No, I told you. You have to stop saying that. It's because he reminds me of my father.
I just love to tease her.
Oh my God! Isn't that horrible when pretty women say that you remind them of their father?
Well, her father was a hell of a man, so I'd take that as a pretty good compliment.
I know, but it makes me feel really old. I'm sorry.
Well, Michael, I hate to break it to you, but
Don't
you're
break
not
it to
that
me,
old,
Ken.
Actually.
Don't
You're not
break
that
it
old.
to me.
No, you're not.
Do
that
not
old.
break it to me. I'm not
You're
ready
not
for
that
it.
old. You're not that old.
So I first have to start off, before we get into any of your Arlen stories, I have to tell everybody that this show tonight would absolutely not be possible without this man, because we called him and we were like, hey, what do you think about this? Not only did he dig through 40 years of pictures, he was contacting people directly for us. I mean, this is where I have to tell you thank you in front of God and everyone, because this is a huge honor for us, Michael.
And it was an honor for me. Absolutely. To honor Arlen. That's what it's about.
Right on.
For sure.
So where does it start with you and Arlen?
I was at, back in 1982, I was in Daytona and they had something called Harley Heaven. They used to, on the Sunday, to tell you how Daytona has changed, they used to do a parade, and it had about 10,000 bikes in it. It was huge. Now, not everybody ended up going to this Harley Heaven area of the track, but if you paid a certain amount of money, you had a ticket, you got into the chicane area. It was a great viewing spot for the Daytona 200, and they had a barbecue and just a fun time in the afternoon on Sunday. Now, keep in mind, everybody is gone on Sunday,
Yeah.
but this was huge, and the line for the barbecue had died down. It was pretty much finished. I'd been taking pictures, and I got into line. There was really just a few people left, and there were thousands that had been taken care of. And there's a person next to me. We start chatting. There's only a few people in front of us, and we're chatting away. And I realized that was Arlen Ness. And that's how I met Arlen Ness, in line for barbecue in Daytona in 1982.
Did you just introduce yourself?
We were talking. Once I realized it was him, I went, I was pretty overwhelmed. I'm going like, wow, this is Arlen Ness. It's even in 1982, I was just pretty starstruck, and I was there on assignment for Easy Riders, and that was a big deal for me. I mean, that was the early years that to be flown across the country at that time to shoot pictures of whatever I wanted to shoot was a pretty big deal for me.
Yeah.
I mean, I was like, wow.
It's still a big deal today.
It still is, yeah. So there I was, and there was Arlen, and it was great, and that's how we met. And, I photographed him wherever I saw him, and really it was about 1987. I'd photographed him a number of times, and I was doing some work for a German magazine that was not a motorcycle magazine. It was actually, believe it or not, a magazine that went for a car rental company, and they did profiles on interesting people. And I went to Japan for them and all over the world. And we proposed an article on Arlen Ness, and the writer came over. We went to Arlen's, and Arlen said, hey, just come on over. You could stay at the house. And so we slept at the house for 3 days in 1987. And Arlen was the most gracious gentleman you could ever imagine. I mean, whatever you wanted to shoot something, hey, how about going up Mount Tamalpais? Absolutely. We loaded up a couple bikes in the pickup truck and went up Mount Tamalpais.
So never it was a pain in the ass, or he didn't have time.
I know I was a pain in the ass, but he was okay with it, which was amazing. I mean, we went up Mount Tamalpais, and I still remember that time that we got stopped by the cops because they're so strict in the California parks with permits. And a parks ranger comes over, and he's got his hand on his gun as he comes over to Arlen and me while I'm taking pictures. It's like, oh, no, this is just a friend of mine. We're just out taking pictures for my friend. It's like, that's what we're doing. And that's when I took, I don't know if you saw it, I have sent you some photos, but there's a picture of him overlooking the Pacific Ocean on the blower bike. And that was taken up Mount Tamalpais. That was that time when we got stopped by the cops.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's such a great picture. We'll make sure that we post that, or people see that here in just a little bit. So how did the book come about? Did it come about because of an exhibit, or did the exhibit come about because of the book?
Ken, you challenged me on this the other day, and you said, when was it? And I started digging because we're approaching our 19th year with the exhibition this year, which Chris Callan is graciously building us a bike for again. Nice. Chris, do you remember that?
Absolutely. Listen. He's
already on it, I'm sure.
Well, you know what my process is, Michael. You know that I have to actually come up with a name for the theme of the motorcycle before I even start building one. So we have the name already.
Oh, geez, I wasn't thinking that was going to happen until June. No. All righty, that's awesome.
Yeah. So,
we're way ahead of the game this year.
Did you announce yet what it is, what the theme is?
No.
Well, I'll tell it right now. No. It's called What's the Skinny?
Right on.
What's the Skinny? And that's a double entendre on what's happening, and it is about skinny bikes. And Arlen will be part of that, and he was planned to be part of it.
All right.
So anyway, where were we then? Back to Arlen.
I was asking you
the exhibition.
About the exhibit or the book, which came first.
So the first 4 years of the exhibition happened at the Journey Museum in Rapid City. And it never had a name.
Because I very, very much remember being there for at least 2 of those years.
Okay, well, in 2002, and this is where it came up, Ken, we were talking the other day, that in 2002, I actually did a show. The Journey wasn't a big gallery. It was a gorgeous, wonderful museum gallery. But it wasn't very big. And we fit about...
Tiny, yeah.
We fit about 10 of Arlen's bikes in there. And that was a great tribute to him at that time. But this is amazing because actually in 2005, I did a really big show on him. And that's when the book came out. And you asked how the book came about. I'd done the show in 2002. I'd photographed him for a lot of years. I had the trip from 1987 going back to them. And I had the idea, since he had the museum and the new shop where he has this wonderful museum, that I thought, well, he's the only builder I know that has an archive of his bikes.
Yeah.
So I took 2 trips out to California. They were about a week or 10 days each. We set up a studio, and we photographed all the bikes in the museum. So that, combined with other bikes I've shot 50 bike features of Arlen's bikes.
No kidding.
Holy moly.
Yeah, so that's right. And so that's how the book came about. I said, this is a great opportunity. It's there. Let's make it happen.
And you actually went out there and shot several. You had to shoot several bikes though for the book, right? You went out there for a while.
Oh no, I shot more than several. I think at that time I shot over 40 of his bikes because I wanted to reshoot. At that time it was just the early days of digital, and it's funny going through the images now. There's an early Nikon, which is top of the line. It was a $6,000 camera. It was great. It's probably equal to what a cell phone is now.
Yeah.
But I also had this incredible studio camera that was for the day. It was a Swiss-made, amazing camera that took great pictures, and that's really what I'm processing now to put online. So the pictures for the book, a lot of them were taken with that big camera.
Wow.
Hey, Mike, real quick, Chris Summer Simmons is in social media, and she said Harley Haven was where she met you.
That is absolutely right. We met, I think it was 87. We met at Harley Heaven, and we kept seeing each other. She was hawking her Harley Women's Magazine that she came down from Chicago with.
Her and Joe.
She was in the back of a truck and handing these magazines out, and that's where we met. And to this day, we were good friends back then, and to this day. A lot of history, right?
Yep.
For sure.
That's what it's all about.
It's funny when you're not paying attention is when the history actually happens. You turn around one day and it's 20 years later, and that. I mean, when you told the story earlier about how you met Arlen Ness, part of me was expecting this big, like Arlen rode down from the clouds and, the lightning separated, what I mean? But the truth is, that's how history is made. I was standing in line for barbecue and just started talking to.
Or he set my parking lot on fire.
Or listen to this. So Chris Summer Simmons just chimed in and said that Pat met Arlen in 1983 at Harley Heaven in a rainstorm hiding under a trailer.
Oh, my God.
There you go.
So Harley Heaven was the place to be, apparently.
And I wish it could still exist, and it was a wonderful thing. But I think what a lot of this is about, we're talking about two things here. One is serendipity, and one is history.
Yeah.
And both those things play together, and that's the story of my interaction with Arlen over all these years.
Yeah.
So you've
I've run into him in Germany and Italy and in just around the world at places all over, and yeah, it's just been fantastic being part of his life, and also the way he allowed me into his, the way he opened himself up.
Yes. So you've seen so many of his, you shot so many of his bikes. You interacted with so many of his bikes, but you've also interacted with a lot of other people's bikes. What do you think it is about his bikes that set him apart from the beginning?
I think Arlen was just a risk taker from the very beginning. If you go back to, let's say, Too Bad, which I think is one of his
my favorite bike.
His iconic bikes.
Yep, my favorite bike.
It's just amazing. It's a twin-engine Sportster with pretty much two of everything: two Weber carbs, two Sportster engines. He did that in 1987, and it was, of course, to be unveiled at the Oakland Roadster Show, which is where all those early bikes were unveiled. And he was running into trouble, but he didn't realize this. He invited some friends out, and at that time for 1987, Dave Perowitz, Arlen Fatland, Donnie Smith, they all went out there, and they planned to just go riding with Arlen and then hang out and go to the Oakland Roadster Show. Uh-huh. But as it turns out, he was so behind in getting it together that everybody said, okay, that's it. No riding. We're in the garage. And they did everything that it took to get that bike together to unveil it at the Oakland Roadster Show.
And that's it right there.
That's so cool.
That's it right there, man.
Yep.
That's how things happen, right?
There's a picture of Barry Cooney and Michael and Arlen up kind of right now, or there was. But yeah, that's so that's so much what it's about.
Is that me, Michael, or?
Yeah, you, Michael.
Oh, cool. Awesome. Well, and I wasn't part of that, so I have a different story. It's not like Dave that knew him. Dave bought a Magna cycle from Arlen back in the mid-'70s. And then Arlen came out to visit Dave Perowitz in 1976, and of course Dave is coming on, and he'll be telling you all these stories. But, he came out and went to Laconia with Dave in 1976, and 1977 he was with Barry Cooney going up to. They stayed in City Park in Sturgis, and then there's all the hamsters and the hamster rides. So that's a different story, and that's more that you'll see from Paul Yaffe and maybe Brian Clock. So I wasn't part of a lot of that because I'm busy doing my own work. I wasn't too much in hamster world, but I had these different interactions. And another thing is that in putting the book together, I did so many hours upon hours of interviews with Arlen's old friends.
Yeah.
That was just a great opportunity. Arlen didn't remember a whole lot. It just wasn't who he was. And he said, well, just call so-and-so. And I called the old painters, the old fabricators, and Jim Davis when he was alive, the frame maker, and got their perspectives on it. And, this goes back to what you say, what makes his bike special. And it really was that he was a risk taker. So, could he even make Too Bad happen? And it was a big risk, and it probably wouldn't happen without the help of his friends getting it together at the last minute. He took those risks, and he was really out ahead of his time in so many ways.
Well, and I'll tell you what, speaking about that, the perspective, George Stinsman just put on social media, hey guys, it's always funny to me how some of us think we're cutting edge, and then I see some of Arlen's stuff from the 70s and 80s, and I laugh. Arlen will always be the bar that we try to reach. But from your perspective, Michael, you have the ability to say that you watched that stuff happen through the 70s, through the 80s, through the 90s, and each one of those decades comes along a whole set of guys that think that they created the long tube chopper, right? So you watched all that happen. You watched these guys set up the history that we talk about today.
Yeah. One thing about Arlen that I should probably include, I don't know if it's been mentioned already, is one of his early taglines was, and I don't remember it exactly, but it was sort of like quality motorcycles from California craftsmen.
Yeah.
So it was almost this bigger world. It wasn't like he did everything himself, and he acknowledged that. He brought in Jim Davis very early. when it first started, Arlen invented this whole concept of being a custom bike builder and making a living at it. That hadn't been really done before. So Arlen kind of came up with this model of build a bike, show it at the Oakland Roadster Show, do really well. They're getting noticed by a magazine. A photographer comes over and shoots it, gets in a magazine. The phone starts ringing, and somebody says, "Hey, I'd like that frame." And Arlen gets on the phone, calls Jim Davis, say, "Hey, Jim, you know that frame you just made for me? Can you make me 5 of them?"
Right.
Calls him back, "Can you make me 10? Can you make me 25? Next thing, he has a mimeograph 6-page catalog.
Right.
With just a few things in it, right?
Yeah,
and just one
listen,
thing led to the next.
Because I wasn't there, I can't say this that I know this personally, but I've heard stories how in a lot of those early shows, it wasn't all like everybody wasn't just immediately in love with Arlen's stuff.
I wasn't at the shows, so I can't vouch for that. So I see it from a distance because I saw it already in magazines. But they made it into magazines, and Arlen did credit those people. One of the dedications in our 2004 book was to one of the journalists that published his early work.
Yeah.
He saw that as how valuable. Now, you could appreciate this being part of the media, Chris, that that had a lot of clout to get in a magazine.
Yeah. Yeah, and that, again, that whoever that journalist was, that first one, that was a risk taker too, because it was a very different style and a very different thing that Arlen was doing.
Exactly.
So in this this picture that keeps flashing up here every once in a while is you interviewing Arlen in a recliner chair or in a chaise lounge. Who are the other people in that photo?
Oh, that's Bob Monroe. You're challenging me here because I'm not seeing the pictures, but Bob Monroe was one of his fabricators. And this was in 2004. At that point, I'm trying to think, Jim Davis had already passed away as frame maker. We were at Bob's house. And then another guy was John Gold, who was one of the managers over at Arlen's shop. And that's what it was. And we were over at Bob Monroe's house. He would shape the tanks and fenders, things like that. Early on, Arlen did a lot of that stuff. And very quickly he said, "Hey, these guys are so good at it. I'm going to just kind of supervise the whole thing and put it together."
Right on.
I love the story that your old assistant Steve Temple posted about going out with Arlen and his Lamborghini or whatever it was.
That was fun.
Yeah.
Did Steve just post you're saying now?
Yeah, he posted like on Instagram a couple days ago or something.
Oh, okay. Because
Steve
is the one that took that picture of me because he was on those shoots for the book.
Yeah.
So he was there. He was part of my life for 11 years, a big part of it, and big part of all this stuff that happened with Arlen.
Sure.
Yeah. Yeah, Arlen loved his fast cars. There's a shot, I don't think I posted it, but it's on my website where I have there's an entire section in the builders area on Arlen. We have a few hundred pictures up, and they're all captioned with dates and everything. But there's a shot of him capping off the air in his tires of his Rolls Royce.
Yeah.
Silver Cloud. So we're pulled into. Now, you keep in mind, at that time, gas stations were full service in 1987. Yeah. But we went to a self-service gas station. You pump your own gas, and he checked the air in his tires, of his Rolls-Royce Silver Cloud. And there's another shot of him riding down a windy road, and I'm up above, and you see him coming down this windy road in his convertible Corniche. Rolls-Royce Corniche convertible. And, then there's a shot of him getting into his Lamborghini. I think it was the day it was delivered to the shop. So he loved fast cars. He loved red. He loved Ferraris. He did the Ferrari bike. It was who he was. And, you think of it, when he started off, he was just a kid that liked that stuff. And he grew up, he was a postman delivering mail. He worked for his dad delivering furniture. That's what he did. And to make some pocket money, he bowled. He was a great bowler, and that's how he made his pocket money. And that's how he made his money. I just wrote about
that. I just wrote about that a couple months ago in my editorial. I was talking about, what kind of conviction it takes to be considered a great man in the field that you're in. And I talked about him, Burt Baker, and someone else, and I talked about the beginnings of what they were doing and how they took those chances, man. And I mean, for him, God, it was crazy. Like the beginning of Arlen and Ness's story was insane. It was nuts.
You know, when he was delivering furniture for his dad, who he worked for, and he sees this knucklehead on the side of the road. Next day he goes back, and it was $300, and he had his bowling money. So he buys the knucklehead without telling his wife, Bev, who's pregnant. She's pregnant with their first child, you know? And so he goes and buys this knucklehead. And of course it's a jockey shift. He doesn't know how to do it. So he brings a friend with him to ride it home. And so at the end, they get near the house. He figures he's got to do it. So he ends up getting on the bike, and he stalls it a dozen times. But he does get it into the garage. Bev opens the door to the garage, sees what he's doing, and just slams the door on him. And just, you can imagine.
Listen, that's what I was just going to say. You know, today that story makes him a hero because he was successful. Right then, to his pregnant wife, he was a scoundrel.
Oh my God! There was another time when he came home that she was in the upper story window and poured a bucket of ice water on him.
Oh, I like this woman.
Of course you do. Of course you do.
Absolutely, Bev's awesome. Bev is awesome. So, I mean, there's amazing stories. But that first knucklehead, the risk in doing that, and he didn't know what he was doing, but he met a guy named Harry Brown. There was a nice little circuit there in Northern California, and he hung out at Harry's house. Harry had some customers. He worked on their bikes at home, and Harry also painted. And Arlen started doing it, and Harry taught him all this stuff. It was like his mentor in those early 63, 64, 65. Right. That's how do you learn? You learn from friends. So that's what happened.
The way it always was.
So,
well,
Michael,
you think about that in the think about it in the context of today, you know, and you think about somebody doing that, right? Going and working at a shop or working at somebody, and then going out on their own, right? Yeah. And it happens all the time. But it
happens all the time.
You know, gosh, how could he do that? And it's like, man, sometimes that's just people's. You know, that's the trajectory that they're on, you know, that's what they're meant to do.
But you also wonder with Arlen, like, what happened? Like, why was Arlen so successful? Can we call him now the godfather of custom bikes, right? I mean, how did it happen? There's a lot of good builders out there. But, you know, one thing I would say is that very early on, and I saw this in all my interactions with him, is how he opened himself up. He was honest, he was gracious, and he was really positive. It was like, sure, come on, let's do it. He would say yes, where a lot of people would say no.
Right. Giving.
Yeah,
and I think sure. I think that's the thing, the really great ones. Like a lot of people ask that same question about Larry. You know, and I think the things that made Larry great in his life was how much he gave of himself at the end of his life, you know, whether he was teaching people something or the time that he spent with people. You know, and same thing here. I mean, I have yet to hear a person that ever saw Arlen walking through a crowd in a bad mood, which is amazing to me because there's days where I shouldn't be let out of the house.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
Well, for example, Scott Takis, hey guys, my career is possible due to Arlen. I'm proud to live my life through painting bikes and supporting my family in the wake of his path. Ryan Gore, the only thing more impressive than his contribution to our industry is how he treated people.
Right.
That says it all right there with those two.
And that's what we're talking about. And how he treated me. He let me in. He let me do all this stuff. I was a royal pain in the ass. But, you know, I know that and I acknowledge it. But one thing I could say is, like, I have this record of his life that's just really amazing to me. I look back and it's frigging the history of this person's life. Yeah. It's really cool.
Incredible.
Yeah, that's an amazing thing to be a part of, you know, that you got to be able to do that and be there. And I felt the same way. I was like, I didn't even think he was going to give me an interview. And he was like one of the most gracious people that I sat down with.
That interview rocks. It does.
You know, we just sat down and, you know, sat there in his office, and, you know, he went up and showed me the museum of all the bikes, and I was they're too close together.
You know what the best
I can't look at them all.
You know what the best part of that interview with him was? I listened to the whole thing today. The best thing was, like, you gave him these questions and you would come at him to where most people would go, yeah, that's right, you know, like I'm the shit. And he would it was almost like he was just sit back with his feet up on the desk going, yeah, you know, I just like stuff like that. So, it was cool. We did it, you know? That's great.
Really simple, right?
Yeah.
Just the way it
Yep.
was. One day at a time, one step at a time,
Yep.
And
Well,
I think
like I
again
said-
that
go ahead.
motto of just say yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just do it. Just try it. Take a risk.
That's right.
Yep. For sure.
Well, cool, man. Listen, I appreciate more than I can put
we
into
could
words.
have you on forever, Michael, but we
You
obviously
got
have
to
other
some.
guests, you know what I mean?
You have some great people coming on. I know you do.
We do.
Well, hopefully we'll get you back on in a couple weeks to talk more about the skinny.
Yes.
And,
Oh, great! I'd love to
make
talk
that
about that.
announcement again with you more in depth.
And I'm going to tell you
That'd be great.
officially, the name of the build that I'm bringing is called Bone Daddy. So it's a skinny voodoo chopper.
Down to the bone.
Yeah.
Yep.
Super. And that's the subhead of the title. It's what's the skinny, and it's motorcycling without the fat. And if you get down to the bone, you're without the fat.
Yep.
There you go.
Nice.
Right on.
Listen, I'm so glad you're doing this whole program dedicated to Arlen. He certainly
absolutely.
it was, I'm just so honored to have been part of it and to have been allowed to document so much. It's been awesome. Was a wonderful, wonderful person.
No, man, I've learned quite a long time ago by my second issue that one of the best and hardest obligations that you have as media is this right here. Like having the ability to give people a platform to get together and celebrate someone's memory rather than just post the news of someone passing away. So we're honored to have any part of this.
Yep.
That's
and
awesome.
Thank you so much for, you've been a huge part of this, Michael, getting all the imagery and helping us with guests and just everything. So we really appreciate it. You're one of a kind as well.
Yes, sir.
Hey, been a pleasure to be part of it. Thank you so much.
All
Thanks,
right, Michael. We'll talk to you soon.
All right. Take care, guys. Bye now.
So we're running way behind.
Surprise,
Which
surprise.
I wish I could tell people that this is the first time watching that's anything different with Shop Talk, but we're usually on the ish time, like 9-ish, 9:30-ish.
I have to say I kind of expected it, especially with this show, knowing that people were going to have so many stories to share. And it's so hard to stop them short because you want to hear them and you want people to know how truly amazing Arlen was as a human being, not just as a motorcycle builder.
Well,
but I think that's, clearly evident based on everybody's commentary.
absolutely. And, this is another thing that normally when we put Shop Talk together, we have a kind of a routine. It's been almost 2 years now, and it goes together smooth. But there was we had so much material to work with, and I'm super grateful. And I mean, having 6 guests, we've only been through 2 guests so far, and it was a lot of work to get ready. So thank you for your patience. And with that, I think we're going to ask Mr. Connie to bring up the next guest.
Dave Perowitz. Need I say
That's
more?
it. That's it, Ken. Really?
Dave Perowitz. Here we go.
You're killing me, man.
No, there's some great pictures of him that Jody posted of him and Arlen. They obviously go way back. Michael alluded to that, back to the 70s. And so I'm super excited to hear what Dave has to say, kind of his recollections of Arlen. Should be really fun.
Here we go.
All right.
Hello, Chris.
Hey, Dave, how you doing, man? You're live with Chris, Ken, and Heather.
How you doing?
Oh, listen, thank you so much for being part of this with us tonight.
Oh, hey, no problem.
So we're gathered to celebrate Arlen and his life and times, and this is a monumental undertaking for us because we feel just honored to be here, and we're asking you guys to actually share the stories.
Okay, well, one thing that Al always told me, right from, when I first met him, he said, "Live for today, because you don't know what's going to happen tomorrow."
Amen.
That was kind of his motto, and I heard him say that, dozens of times. You got to live for today.
Yeah.
And he certainly did.
Well, and this was what year did you meet Arlen? You had told me the story. It wasn't too long ago. It seemed like I was at your shop, and we had done an interview where you told me the beginning of this stuff. But would you share that here?
Yeah, sure. I actually met Arlen in 1975 we went to a show in Detroit. It was the show was called It's Called Detroit. It was a big show, motorcycles, and I remember we drove out there in my van in a snowstorm, and Arlen was one of the judges. He was with Larry Comferman. Do you remember Larry?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, Larry Comferman was the editor of Custom Bike Magazine at the time.
Mm.
And I had met Larry because he flew out and had shot some of our bikes for his magazine. And I had talked to Arlen on the phone quite a few times, you know, to order parts. But anyways, we met there. And at the same show, I met Donnie Smith and Ed Kerr. So it was quite an event, really. And so I invited Arlen out to Laconia that year. So in 1975, Arlen flew out. He shipped his bike out here, and he flew out, and he went to Laconia for the first time.
Right on.
And Arlen introduced me to drinking tequila.
No.
That was the first time I ever drank tequila. You know, that was one of Arlen's favorites back in the day.
Did he give you the rules to drinking tequila, or did he just turn you loose?
No, he just turned me loose. Unfortunately, I didn't know the rules until it was too late.
You come by them naturally on that first good round of tequila, because the only rules are from the first time you drink, the first drink you take of tequila on a good tequila night, nothing else that you say or do is wrong.
Yeah, right.
And from there, you're all set.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No, it was. So we went to Laconia together, and at the end of the weekend, Arlen said, "Hey, I know some guys in Detroit. You want to drive to Detroit, and we'll hang out and ride our bikes." I said, "Sure." So I loaded up my bike and Arlen's bike in my van, and we drove to Detroit, and we hooked up with Yosemite Sam. You know who he is, right?
Yes, and just got the unfortunate news that the day after Arlen passed away, that Yosemite Sam did.
Yeah, I mean, geez, that's just so how ironic.
Yeah.
And so we stayed at Yosemite Sam's house for a week, and we rode our bikes every day with Sam and his brother Jim and Ron Finch and Tony Carlini. And they showed us all around Detroit, and we had a hell of a time. And Arlen and I became really good friends. I went out for many years. I'd fly out there and go to the Oakland Roadster show with him, and that was a pretty big deal out there. Back then is the Oakland Roadster show. And, we developed a very long friendship.
And this was, in a lot of ways, this was the beginning of the Hamsters too, right? I mean, the three of you guys.
Yeah. I mean, the Hamsters started in 1978. Arlen had never been to Daytona before, and I started going to Daytona, I think, in 71. And then I think around 76, maybe, probably 77, Arlen and Barry Cooney and a few other guys, they came to Daytona. And so we, that was kind of the beginning of all of us hanging. And then the next year we started the Hamsters there in 1978.
Yeah. There's a suspicious name coming on social media under the title Jaywitz that says, "Tell them to talk about Daytona."
Well, in Daytona, we would get up in the morning and we would be on our bikes all day. We would go to the sand drags were really big back then on the beach. And but we would go out and then we'd come back in for dinner and at the time Jimmy Leahy was with us, who was also instrumental in starting the Hamsters, and my wife, and so we were going to go out one night and Jimmy and Susan, they were napping, and we got up and they didn't want to get up, so we all left. And then, we did our usual riding and, going from bar to bar. And we came back in late that night, and there was plates on all our doors, and it said Hamsters, and it was Hamsters East Coast president, Hamsters Midwest president, Hamsters West Coast president, and it was me and Donnie Smith and Arlen, and the logo on the bottom was Boogie Till You Puke.
I love this story.
Yeah.
This is the fifth or sixth time that I've heard this, dude, but it makes me piss myself every time.
Yeah, and we all laughed, and it was really a fun time, and that was really the beginning that started the Hamsters. And then in Sturgis that year in '78, Donnie Smith made up some shirts that said Hamsters on them, and again, that was the beginning of it all. All these years, we just had our 40th anniversary last year, and all of us that started the group, we all got together, and it was, it's been quite a run. I spent a lot of time in the early years out at Arlen's house, and he spent a lot of time out here, and him and Bev would come out here, and we'd, go sightseeing and take him to the Cape and eat lobsters, and we had a lot of really good times.
This is like over and over again tonight already, and in preparation for the show, we're having, the stories and everything, and everybody keeps coming back to the same thing, the kind of man that this was. More than the bikes, more than the accomplishments, the business that was built out of this man's passion and his design and his abilities, but the kind of person that he was.
Arlen was a real gentleman. He was truly my mentor from the beginning. When the motorcycle thing started getting really big for me, and I had to deal with the public, and so many times I was with Arlen when he had to deal with the public, and I always thought, what would Arlen do in this case? And he was, like I say, he was always a pure gentleman.
Yeah.
Even in times that were uncomfortable, he made it right.
Yeah. And over and over again, and even in the pre-show interviews, people would reflect back to times where they were like crazy over something that was going on, and, console and Arlen with their problem, and he'd go, is it really that big of a deal?
Yeah.
Like
yeah.
He seems so laid back and so, so easygoing.
Oh, he was, and he was truly the master. I don't think anybody will ever do what Arlen done in his career. He just constantly came up with new ideas and innovations, and did stuff that, everybody's copying today, and probably have no idea that Arlen was doing that 30, 40 years ago.
Right.
I see it all the time. And, Arlen was truly a great, great man. He loved his.
So tell us kind of one of your favorite stories that might surprise people about Arlen.
Well, he was just a real gentleman, and, everywhere we went, we did a lot of shows together back in the late '70s and early '80s, and he always knew how to deal with the public. Drunks would come up, and I hate having to deal with drunks, and of course I think most everybody does, but Arlen was like an example to me. He knew how to handle things. He knew how to be a gentleman and really, show his kindness.
Yeah.
And it looks like you guys had done some jogging together. Is that true?
I
You
saw
like those
that
shorts?
picture. I love those
Huh?
Those
shorts.
shorts are something else, man.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that was one
That's the
time when
style.
one time when I was staying, back in the day, I used to jog a lot actually, and Arlen did too. And I think that was when I was out visiting him. I think that picture was from sometime in California when I was staying at his house. Whenever I went out there, I always stayed at Arlen's house, and they always made me feel like family. As a matter of fact, I used to sleep in Corey's room. They'd take Corey and put him out on the couch, and he was just a kid then, and they'd put him on the couch and not have his room. But yeah, we used to jog. We used to jog together. We did it in Sturgis a bunch of times too.
Starting out as both getting your start as painters, I'm kind of curious, like, how much you played off of each other as the materials and the processes were changing. And even when, like you and I had talked about how at first there was so much business, it was going so fast. And eventually you had to start, treating it more like a business and really starting to calculate things. How much of that went on between the two of you?
Well, I'll tell you one big thing is, we used to compare notes as far as painting goes. And Arlen turned me on to using silk screen dye. If you bought a quart of paint, of course, a quart of paint was pretty cheap back then. But we'll just say, a quart of candy paint was $50. You could buy a quart can of silk screen dye for $25 that you could make 5 quarts of.
Yeah.
The stuff that costs $50. And so we started using silk screen dye, and it worked out really well, back then. And he showed me some other techniques, and I showed him a few techniques, and we enjoyed doing that stuff. He had a little teeny spray booth in his garage, with some glass sliding doors on it, and a homemade booth like all of us had back then. Nobody had regular spray booths, and it worked out pretty well. We all have our own style,
Yeah.
but that Bay Area style was, something that I really took to. And, I brought a lot of that Bay Area style to the East Coast with all the stuff that we were doing. And it was all, it was all from Arlen, and then just, some of the guys that were working with Arlen back then, Munn, Bob Monroe, he's truly an unbelievable craftsman. And Munn was one of Arlen's good friends. And he's still doing it today. And Jim Davis, who had passed away from a ultralight crash, Jim was the one that made the first frames for Arlen. And a lot of other guys, Stu Lumberg and actually Steve Ellington, all those guys were Arlen's buddies. And it was pretty cool seeing how the West Coast lived, versus what we do out here.
Yeah. Well, and another part of that too, I mean, as you guys watched each other's styles and business progress and the industry came up too, you were raising families, and I mean, that was
Right.
something, you're one of the other stories. We talked about how uncommon a story like Ness is today with, 3 generations and spanning those decades of the changes of this industry. But the Pirowitz
Right.
family is right there too.
Yeah. No, I've been very fortunate to have Jody, follow along, and she's truly a motorcycle person. I don't know if I told you the story. We were getting tattooed by our friend Don Nolan, who passed away this past year. And so when Jody came out, she had her hand, she had gotten her hand tattooed. And, I said, Jody, why'd you get your hand tattooed?
Yeah.
And, she said, I'm going to be in the motorcycle industry forever, so it doesn't much matter now, does it?
God.
I said, yeah, I guess you're right.
Oh, I love her. I love her, man. Like,
So great.
she is the real deal.
Yeah, no, she is. It's funny you say that, Chris. At Billy Lane's race, last year at Billy Lane's race, a whole bunch of my friends and hamsters were at the race watching, and one of the guys said that. One of my good friends said that to me afterwards. He said, all this stuff with Jody is not a fluke. She is definitely the real deal.
Oh yeah.
And and she is.
When you talk to her, and she conveys the kind of passion at every turn, whether you talk to her about Bonneville, her Sons of Speed Racing, or if she's involved in a bike show, or anything that she's doing, like, she loves all of this the way that you have to be able to do it for your whole life.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. When young guys come up to me and say, "Hey, what do I got to do? What's the secret? Or what do you got to do to be, a big motorcycle guy? Be famous? And I said, you got to love it. You gotta love what you're doing. You gotta live it 24/7, and that's the only way that it happens.
Yeah,
and not to say it's going to happen. It's just but
you need a lot of luck too.
Right, you do. You need a lot of luck. You got to be in the right places at the right time. And for me, Timeless-Ness was one of those deals. If I hadn't met Arlen when I did, and became good friends with him, and got to travel out west, and who knows, I may not have been able to do what I did.
Yeah.
Yeah, he really did pave the way for a lot of people, for sure. So.
Yeah, well, he was quite an innovator. He really was.
Well, and that's not to take anything away from you or Donnie either. I mean, you guys, all of you together, we say this all the time. The reason we're having this thing tonight and taking this time to remember this man is because what it really set down, it laid the groundwork for everything that we get to enjoy today. You guys were starting all of that when you first met.
Yeah. It was the very beginning of all of this, and I got to be right there on the ground floor, and I was lucky that like I say, I was lucky I made the connections I did back then.
Yeah. Well, listen, man, we appreciate you coming on tonight and sharing some of this with us. Again, I apologize for being a little bit late getting launched on this, but we had so much material.
Oh yeah, no, I'm sure.
We were lucky to do it, and what's next for you? Where are you guys going to be next?
Well, Arizona. We'll be in Arizona Bike Week. We're doing a paint show at the Roadhouse, and if anybody's got a cool paint job on your bike, come on down to the Roadhouse on Saturday of Bike Week in Cave Creek. So we'll be at Cave Creek at the Roadhouse Saturday for the Perowitz Paint Show.
Yeah,
nice.
And I got to tell you too, like the diversity that's starting to show up at your paint shows, like the one in Daytona, was off the hook. From old bikes to new bikes to race bikes to, big wheel baggers and vintage kind of old lowrider baggers. Like, it was awesome. That show's kicking ass.
Yeah, no, I couldn't have been happier with the way things turned out in Daytona. We had such a great group of bikes, and it was a great venue. Melissa did an awesome job putting that whole thing together and putting the pavers down, and I'm looking forward to doing a lot more shows there, as the years go by.
Right on.
Awesome.
Well, again, man, thank you very much. Thanks for taking time to help us do this the right way. I really appreciate it, Dave.
No problem. And listen, I want to thank you for that last feature. It looks great. You guys did a great job on that.
Coming out right now.
Nice.
Yep.
Yes, sir.
Just got mine.
All right, man. Well, we'll talk to you again soon. We're going to have you guys on real soon to go over some more stuff with the paint shows, I'm sure.
Yeah, anytime, Chris.
Okay, thank you,
Thanks,
sir.
Dave.
Okay, Ken, thank you.
Yeah, Dave, another legend in our industry. He's
I
got
know. I'm
such
always
a fan
amazed
club.
he knows my name. I'm always
I
amazed that
know.
anybody remembers my name at all.
Ken,
know,
listen, I got to sit down with him at his shop. The story that I was telling, it was like 2 winters ago, but I got to sit there it was just an afternoon of hanging out with Dave. And man, if I would have had the kind of technology that we have today to actually put that in long form podcast, I'm actually going to make plans this winter to go back because it was so good. It was so good. And those stories are so precious, and we're going to lose them. I mean, this is
No, we definitely should. I
Yeah.
mean, we literally are within minutes of his place a couple times a year. There's no reason we shouldn't. But I'm just like you. You get excited when, Dave knows your name or and things like that. You're like, or like Chris. I have to totally dog you on this. Chris totally fangirls. He totally fangirls over certain people. People will call him and he'll be like, "Yeah, guess who just called me?" Yeah. I love it. He gets so excited.
I have a lot of respect for the craft. But listen, man, if this is your first time checking out Shop Talk, we do it once a week, Thursdays at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Usually we do about 20 minutes of news. We go over the current topics. We'll have a guest on. But always, as you can see to the other side over here, there's social media. And we encourage you guys to join in the conversation. Bring as much of it up as we can. Heather usually keeps the stream going.
I've been slacking tonight because the stories are so good and I don't want to interrupt. And I do hope that Dave takes a minute to go back and read the comments from Ray and Darren McCaig and everybody, because they
loves Dave so much.
Everybody loves Dave, and Jody was there chiming in. Thanks for your couple little tips on the shorts and the Daytona, Jody. You can send those to us anytime.
Sure. Well, and I just want to make a shameless plug here for everyone that might be watching, listening, etc. We are Shop Talk here live in the Russ Brown Motorcycle Attorney Studios. But we also have a podcast. So the best thing that you can do besides share, so if you can go and share this on your page, that would be super helpful. But if you can go to iTunes, Stitcher, wherever you might consume a podcast, if you don't know how to consume a podcast, just put it in your phone and it will come up, and then go subscribe to it so it automatically downloads. That will help us immensely. So anything you can do to help us kind of spread the word. We continue to have, shows that are reaching more and more people, but we just want to get the word out. This is basically a community service for us. Chris and I aren't in trouble or anything, but it is basically community service for us. So any way that we can get the word out, all the better. So thank you so much for watching, listening, etc. And then we've got a whole bunch more segments and more people to talk to.
There's something I got to bring up right now, and it's on the screen right now on social media. Ray has said several times how much he digs your Zappa look. So you are now moving up from Peace Frog to Ken Zappa Conti.
Nice. There we go. Yeah.
I like Peace Frog
a little bit. You never know.
Listen,
Did
man.
you say it's gross, Heather?
No, I said I like Peace Frog.
Oh.
Peace Frog rocks. So we're super honored to have everybody on that we do tonight. One of the biggest things that makes us possible are the pictures that Michael Lichter has scoured since Sunday. He's been going over the pictures that we're using in the pictorials to memorialize one of the greatest men that ever set down wrenches and made this custom motorcycle thing happen. And we're going to take 2 seconds before we bring our next guest on and go through another round of Michael's incredible pictures honoring the life of Arlen Ness.
Of course, Sturgis is my favorite Avanta. All of them all over. It's probably the biggest. And I think this year will be my 42nd year of going in a row. It was kind of a joke. It's just got bigger and more prestige now to be a hamster. And now that we have 3, Zach, Corey, and I, it's great because we can switch off.
If you head over to lichterphoto.com, you can actually see between Arlen and Corey and Zach, there's hundreds and hundreds of images that you can check out, and there's opportunity to actually buy
I did
and print
post a
some of
link
those.
to Lichter Photo earlier.
There you go.
I did just post a link to ShopTalk as well, the podcast. So if people want to check that out there, and if I can take a minute and
Sure.
read this comment from Robert Pandia.
Sure.
There comes a time in our lives when we lose more good friends than we make. We have all lost a friend in Arlen, and the measure of his life is how many great people counted Arlen as a friend.
Absolutely.
It's true. It's true.
Very well said, Robert. Thank you for sharing.
That's good, dude. Yeah, for sure.
Chris Simmons had mentioned earlier that Pat is watching. Pat, I miss seeing you, man. Where are you going to be next? But she also said, thank you so much for doing this for our friend Arlen. This is our immense pleasure to be able to provide a platform to do this. So thank you guys so much for making this as great as it is tonight. It's a huge honor, and we're lucky to be here.
Yeah, so one of the things that's interesting about Arlen is even at 78, he was still cool. Like, I saw him last year at the Quail, right? He's on stage. He's got his sunglasses on. He obviously was, deep into, being sick or whatever, but he was cool. Like, he was cool. I want to be cool when I'm in my 70s. I'm for sure not going to be. My kids don't think I'm cool right now, so I'm definitely not going to be cool in my 70s. But, I think it's such a great thing to see somebody that just did what they wanted to do, and I don't know. It's inspirational for sure.
So a couple of you guys are mentioning on social media right now that, Tim Carnes just said, thanks, guys. The show has been excellent. We still have 3 more guests to get through. Three fantastic guests. Don't go anywhere yet. Right now we're going to pitch over to Blondie for a minute and check in on social media. Surprise.
Surprise.
Yeah, surprise.
All right, let me scroll back here. You caught me off guard.
A lot of great people tonight.
Yeah, there are. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but if people want to scroll up on Facebook, Diane Shadow's wife Jones, Rick Fairless adapted a poem to honor Arlen Ness with the help from Jimi Hendrix. Then he shared it a few days ago. She very kindly has posted that there, and it's beautiful. I know I can't read it all because I'll cry. I cry at everything, and I'll definitely cry for that. So
that was funny. Heather said actually earlier today when we were getting ready for this, she goes, "Oh my God, there's no way I can be on the show tonight. I'm going to cry from the beginning to the end."
Yeah,
That's what I thought actually too. I was like, I'm going to start crying at some point.
Yeah, when I go to talk, I get choked up. Let's see. This is from Darren McKay. Dave asked me if I wanted to trade skate decks with him one time. He paints one for me and I paint for him.
No kidding.
I about fell over. He has inspired me in my entire life.
See?
That's a total fangirl moment there.
But listen, Darren gets it, man. I mean, because Darren, like, there's a whole generation of guys that think Darren is the be-all, end-all of an artist. But when someone that your whole life you've been looking up to acknowledges that you've reached that place where, hey, you're okay too, it's huge. That's huge,
Oh
man.
my gosh, yeah.
That's the biggest.
One of the things that I find so amazing is that so many people not only, will comment on how they knew Arlen, but they remember exactly when and where they met him. He made that much of an impact on their life. That is outstanding.
Yeah, that's like a Kennedy level impression.
It just, like I said, it just shows that he was so much more than a bike builder.
So we got to keep the show rocking here, and with that,
do it.
I'm gonna turn over to Ken so we can get the next guest on.
Next guest is a gentleman that I call my friend, Paul Yaffe, Paul Yaffe Originals and Baggard Nation. He is a hamster and counts Arlen Ness as one of his inspirations for sure. So I thought it'd be great to have him on. He's on the younger side of some of the builders out there that have been inspired by him. I said younger side, Paul. I didn't say young. So I thought it'd be great to have him on because he really kind of, from the beginning of his building right to, up to now, has been inspired by this guy, and he was a great friend of his as well. So let's get talking to Paul.
Hello.
Hey, Paul, how you doing? You're live on Shop Talk.
Hi, Chris. How are you?
I'm good, man. I'm good. Actually, this evening is probably one of the best I can remember us having here. So thank you very much for helping make this happen.
Oh no, thank you for having me, and I've been along with you for the whole show, and it's been amazing.
Right on, man. I'm so glad that you're on. You were like one of the first people that I thought of when we started talking about doing just a whole show dedicated to Arlen. I was like, we have to have Paul on because you just have so many kind of experiences with him over the years, from the beginning, up until, not too long ago. Can he hear me?
I am back. Yes, I'm sorry.
Okay.
I was watching the show, and now that I'm on it, I have to turn off this stuff.
Yes, turn it off. Otherwise, it'll be like echo.
Yeah, it's just freaking me out. I'm like, what? Wait a minute.
So
for sure.
One of the things that I want to talk about real quick, man, is why exactly we're having you on, and where it came from, the association between you and Arlen, because it was Michael Lichter that said, yeah, you know, when you had the opportunity to pick your mentor that he paired up for the exhibit, this, Arlen was your selection, and that's where I want to start talking about this.
So, 1987, I had just bought a Softail from Bartell's Harley Davidson and Marina Del Rey, and I think back then they were in Culver City, and I was hanging out with a buddy of mine, Sig Emerson, in his backyard where we were gonna tweak our bikes, and Sig reached over and handed me this Arlen-Ness catalog and said, "Have you ever heard of this dude?" And I was like, "No, who's this?" And I started looking through his, it's about as thick as a Cycle Source magazine. And I started thumbing through it, and I was like, "Wow, this guy's amazing," And so, needless to say, I stole that catalog from Sig and took it home and immediately ordered, Bub tapered exhaust and pullback handlebars and chrome Allen bolt kit and on parts from the Arlen-Ness catalog to customize my early Softail, and I was immediately just awestruck with everything Arlen. His style was undeniable and immediately became part of the blood that pumps through me. So
well, and those bikes back then, I mean, they've changed so much over the years, right? I mean, his style has evolved, don't you think?
Yeah, I think like any I don't even know if you could classify Arlen's style. He's forever evolving, and it's I guess it's the mark of his mastership is his ability to change directions and constantly reinvent and constantly challenge our imaginations and look at this, and you're like, what?
Right.
Just constantly, right? I mean, everything you see of his is like, you didn't see that coming. Yeah. He's certainly, you could never call Arlen a follower.
Oh my God. And that's what we were kind of talking about earlier, is like, the kind of self-belief, or the being able to encourage yourself and just stick to something, because like I said, I've heard stories before where showing up to some of those early shows, everybody wasn't always like enamored with what Arlen was doing, but he believed in it, and people saw that spark of creativity, and he went after that, man, and he stayed true to himself through the whole thing.
I know how he felt.
Right?
Yeah.
You had a little bit of that, Paul, huh?
You never know. There's a lot of insecurity.
Yeah. There's a lot of hours too. I mean, we talked about that a little bit. There's a lot of hours where it's you in the darkness alone with one lamp. You know what I mean? And like people
absolutely.
think that your life is full-time on stage with all the lights and a whole crowd there. It's really most of the time with you in the dark and one lamp, and you're who you have to count on.
Yeah, and thank God for the support of our families and the people we lead on and our loved ones, and You know, because sometimes, you know, you look in your family's eyes and they're looking at you going, what are you doing there?
Chris knows that look
Yeah,
very
so
well.
you've met my wife.
Don't worry, it's gonna be cool when I'm done. You know.
Oh my God.
Are you sure he doesn't like have a camera in here and he knows our conversations?
Anybody who's, you know, done that certainly knows how that feels, and I'm sure Arlen knows it over and over and over. You know.
Yep.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So did you and Arlen talk about business?
Yeah, I mean, I remember the first time I was making some parts, and and some distributors were showing interest. And, you know, back then, you know, CCI was Custom Chrome Incorporated, but in the industry they were known as Copy Casket Incorporated.
Oh.
And that's
Was
what
that
everybody
your
called them.
side-mounted
Right.
license plate?
Yeah, oh God! Well, you were afraid to sell anything to them because, you know, their reputation was they're just going to take it, right? So, and copy it, and, you know, and Arlen is, you know, the Ness family, the Ness brand is no stranger to plagiarism, and I found myself in the same boat and called for a sympathetic ear. So I called the shop, and he said, "Hey, can I talk to Arlen?" And they didn't ask me who I was or anything of the sort. They just said, "Yeah, hold on." You know,
Right.
next thing you know, "Hi, this is Arlen." You know, and you know, he got on the phone, and I said, "Hey, you know, Paul Yaffe, you don't know me." He's like, "Oh, hey, Paul, I know exactly, you know, blah, blah." And he's just always that kind of guy, you know,
Right.
that could just, with a couple of words or with a look or with a moment of his time, could validate, you know, years of your, you know, existence. You know,
Right.
I was never able to as much as I knew him and as much time as we spent together and as much, you know, events we found ourselves at together, I was never able to not look at him with awe and admiration. And I was always a fan, you know, even though we were friends. You know, I couldn't make eye contact with him, or I'd look at my feet if he said something to me.
Yeah.
You know,
See?
as much as I didn't want to do that, he just humbled me every time I spoke to him. You know,
That's awesome.
Yeah,
See,
but,
Heather,
you
it's
know.
not just me. It's
No,
not just
I
me.
know.
Right. He was absolutely my hero.
Yeah, everybody should have that person in their
Yes.
life or people.
Yeah. He was, and I'll tell you, I chewed his ear off about, you know, different things, and he'd answer with his experiences, and I'll tell you, Corey has been the same way to me. Corey and I have been friends for, you know, it feels almost like we grew up together, and we're, you know, and you know, me and Corey find ourselves on the phone all the time, you know, talking about business and theorizing about the shape of things to come and directions and, you know, ideas and where we would go. And, you know, I can't imagine my business without Ness influence.
So give us a little bit of insight, because we had kind of touched on this with someone else earlier, but you know, so you call up, you tell Arlen you're frustrated, you know, somebody's knocking something yours off, and what's the kind of reaction you get from him?
Never a bad or harsh word about anybody.
Right.
You know, in the most diplomatic, well, you know,
That sounds just like you, Paul.
you know, right. And yeah, well, you know where I get it from. You know, it's like sometimes, you know, and sometimes all we can do is keep creating things. And
Right.
you know, and I have a picture of railroad tracks that Y off in two different directions in my office. It's right over my desk, and it says, "If you don't change directions, you wind up where you're going."
Yeah.
And it's I've printed it in every catalog we've ever printed. The inside cover says, "If you don't change directions, you wind up where you're going." And it's something we live by. It's just, you got to keep creating. Our industry often is like fashion, and you know, we're you know, I guess if you find yourself at a trend-setting level, you're blessed and cursed at the same time.
Yeah.
So,
Absolutely.
you know, it is what it is. I don't know if you can choose that, you know, but you don't have a choice once you're there, I guess. Because I don't know how to do anything else. It's all we do. So,
Yeah.
So what was when you did pick Arlen as your mentor for that exhibit with Lichter? What was his reaction to it?
Arlen's reaction?
Yeah. Did you ever hear from Michael how he felt about it, or?
No, I don't recall if I did. He was there, and he didn't kick my bike over or anything, so I guess it was okay.
That's awesome.
So, we certainly, he and I share a love for motorcycling. It's our obsession. I don't know how to shake it. And I often think I should, but, it's what I get up in the morning thinking about, and it's what I put my head on a pillow at night thinking about. And, those pure days, which, business clouds that sometimes, but those pure days when you get to spend a day in the fab shop working on a project, that you've been trying to finish for 5 years kind of thing. And I have a few of those, are the best days, the days that are just joyful.
Well, I think anybody who's been, immersed in this culture for any amount of time has watched you define and redefine yourself a couple times, and it makes sense. It makes sense, watching the pictures go by with you and Arlen and you and Indian Larry, and where those inspiration came from, and becoming the person that you are today. How much of that influence you can see in the things that you do and the way that you interact with people.
I guess it's you just it's sometimes it's hard, I don't even know necessarily how to put it in words. You're so grateful for the gift that I've been given, that I get to make a living doing something I love, and at the same time, sometimes it can be, exhausting. But it's just, it's the love of it that fuels you, So it's anybody that comes up and you watch somebody's face change when they're looking at something you built or looking at something you created. How can you not be fueled by that? How can you not just want to sit there and talk to them all day and answer any question you possibly can about any question they may have, because they're, you slaved over this thing and they're admiring it, and that's a gift, right? So
Absolutely.
So I often find myself saying it's lucky, and my email handles are lucky at, and it's because I feel lucky. I feel, lucky every day that. My work often is appreciated, and it's like a bonus to the self satisfaction you get just from creating something you love, right? So,
for sure. So you spent a lot of you put a lot of miles on with Arlen, right? Riding out to Sturgis.
Yes, lots of miles with Arlen. It's always an adventure.
You giggle. So what's that about? Is there some choice stories?
I'll tell you, I was on the phone. I found myself just matter of factly on the phone with Grady Pfeiffer the other day, who's a fellow hamster and the gentleman who brought me into the hamsters, and a lifelong friend and a lifelong friend of ours. And Grady and I we happened to be on the phone for something completely different, and we just started, hey, remember this? And then as I was looking for some pictures of Arlen, I found some old pictures, and we started reminiscing about some old rides and things. Oh, you remember when so and so took his pants off in the bar and was dancing around naked? And then we just started going off on that was the year that this happened, and we found ourselves on the phone for 40 minutes trading stories, laughing, and then for a moment, I think we stopped and paused, and then there was that kind of awkward silence for a minute as we both reflected at why we were on the phone.
Yeah.
And, we kind of sighed, and, and I said, hey, Big, I love you, man. And he said, I love you too. And, that was why we were on the phone. It was just a moment to give each other a hug and say I love you, but it turned into this good times thing. And I was just thinking about, I was telling him there was a day where, so Brian Adams, a gentleman, used to work for me as a hamster, and younger than me. And me and Brian, this is 20 plus years ago, are riding on the way to Sturgis and we got lost. And so Arlen and Barry Cooney and Grady, and maybe Steve Ellington too. There's 4 or 5 of us, and then me and Brian were the kids, right? And we all got lost heading off, and we were just chasing Arlen because he was a bat out of hell, right? And so we ended up at the end of some cornfield in a dead end, and we were completely lost. So we were at this dead end. So me and Brian get off our bikes, put our kickstands down, and start taking a pee in the cornfield, right? And so all the other guys are standing there doing the I gotta pee dance, and they're pinching off, and we're like, what are you guys doing? And we're like, why don't you just go pee? And they said to us, well, we can't break the seal. and we're like, what? And they're like, yeah, if we break the seal, we have to pee every 20 minutes after that. We're not peeing until we get where we're going. And Brian and I were laughing at them. We thought that was the funniest thing ever. And then, just started wildly peeing all over the place, like, oh, you can't pee. So now Brian and I are riding to Sturgis, and we're the ones who won't break the seal. We're the ones who are we're totally full circle. We're like, no, we're not. No, we're not taking a pee break. Because once you break it, that's just the gift of age. Yeah.
Oh God, you can't call it a gift. It's such a pain in the ass.
There was a little sarcasm there.
Yep.
But there's just so many, of those stories. Who got thrown out of what bar, and who hit who, and who, it never ends. We have so many. I mean, this is my 30. This year will be my 30. Well, I'm doing the math right. 34th or 35th consecutive year riding the Sturgis. And many of those years was riding with Arlen. So, and he's just part of our group, the hamsters. We do a big ride every year at Arlen's shop, and 100 plus guys show up at Arlen's shop. We have a party at his shop before we ride. The next day we leave, and we take a 6, 7, 8 day, whatever, depending on the route we're taking. Could be 2,000 miles, could be 4,000 miles. It just every year we take a different route, so we see a different part of the country, and the hamsters ride, right?
Yeah.
It's our annual ride to Sturgis, and it's always started at Ness's place. That's always where it started. So.
Wow.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, you got a lot of people cheering you on here too on social media tonight. Dwayne Ballard was just on and said, I always thought Paul could predict what was coming next in the custom motorcycle world. I finally realized he just creates what's next. He's so good at everyone else wants to follow his lead. That's awesome. That's big accolades right there, buddy.
Dwayne, you're making me cry. Well, I learned from the master at it. So
there you go.
Well, and I wonder about that. I've always wondered about that, and maybe you and I have talked about this, Paul. But I assume that you were kind of intentional in the way that you kind of approached the custom motorcycle, because everybody knows that it's really difficult to make a living building custom motorcycles, and that, parts is kind of how custom motorcycle builders can make a living. And that's what, that was kind of the system that Arlen had set up. Did you do that intentionally, or did that just kind of come, people just started asking for parts?
So I think by the time that I was doing it, I was listening to Corey earlier say that, his dad made a set of bars, and then someone would ask him to reproduce them, and someone would ask him to reproduce them. And that's a little bit of what happened with us. But in the early 90s, when I really started thinking, I think we opened our shop in 91. So I had 2 partners that invested in me. So I had this shovel head chopper I had built, and these 2 guys, I sold the chopper for 10 grand, and these 2 guys gave me 10 grand, and we opened our shop with 30 grand. And that was the beginning of, first shop was American Legend Motorcycle Company. And they made me go to college, community college, and take a business course because I didn't know anything about business. And to graduate this business course, I had to write a business plan out for the business I wanted to open, which was a motorcycle shop. And I still have that business plan. I still have it in its little black paper folder with I wrote it on an actual regular typewriter with all its mistakes, and a ribbon typewriter, I guess you'd call it, right? So I typed it out, and it has every tool I need, and it has and in the beginning, the first page talks about my vision of what I'm going to do with this business. And the vision is I want to design and create a line of parts and sell them to other shops and builders, and I want to do this and do that. And there's a whole little outline. And then the next page talks about what I'm going to need to do it. You know, the investment and the tools and the shop equipment and the square footage and all that stuff that you learn in junior college business classes. So, yeah. But so in that business plan, if you 30 years later, if you look back on it, you'd say, wow, that's pretty much what he did.
Yeah.
So, yeah, but it wasn't an original idea. I had mentors and people that influenced me and heroes like, well, really not like just as Arlen-Ness. I mean, he was the hero. He was the mentor. He was the guy I idolized. And, I'm surprised in that business plan, it just didn't say, I just want to be like Arlen-Ness.
Right on.
Yeah, that's what
I will tell you, kiddies watching this show, that there is the importance of a secondary education, because 22 years ago now, I can look back at my original business plan and I have to ask myself what I was smoking that day, because it didn't go anything like that. So there you go. There's the benefit of secondary education. Stay in school.
Right. or yeah, I never did that in the beginning, but I went back to school.
Right.
Yeah. I used to have a shirt that said "dropout" on the front of it, and I used to love to wear that shirt because it was so true.
Oh, that's great, man. That's
right
great.
on, Paul. Well, we've still got 2 more guests we need to get on, and I think people are starting to get sleepy. So I think we're gonna move on. But we really appreciate you coming
Thank
on
you so much.
and talking about Arlen and just everything that goes along with that. So thanks for doing that for us.
Yeah, I love that man and his family, and I like I said, I can't imagine the place I'd be without them. So,
Yes, sir.
Amazing family.
Awesome.
All right, Paul. Thanks a lot.
Thanks a lot, Paul. We'll talk to you
Thanks,
soon.
guys. Appreciate you.
Bye.
Dude, how are we ever gonna do another show after this? Because
I don't know.
I mean, this is the stories and the history and the images. Like, God, so much, and so, like, you guys that are coming in on social media, there's so much happening on social media. I can't get enough comments to the actual screen. So thank you guys for that, and thank you for sharing it and helping Shop Talk rock.
So we don't have to worry about Keith Ball coming on because he said he had to go get dinner. We're about an hour late for him. So
we'll have to. I'll apologize to Mr. Ball at another time, but
I think the only way we'll be able to follow this up is by getting these industry greats on and getting their stories while they're still here.
Tell those stories. Yeah, tell those stories.
There's so many of them still out there that we need to make it our mission to get them on here. So people like Corey have the ability
and
to hear their voices
we are
again.
so up for suggestions on that. I mean, that is not, we know who we know, but there's obviously other people out there that are.
I'm actually really surprised more people haven't sent us suggestions. If you've got them,
Ray
send them in.
Ray keeps suggesting that we just keep you on the screen. He said this is the best show that we've ever done, but he also said that more Heather, please. That's like more cowbell.
Thank you, Ray. Oh, and by the way, Ray Paisley on that little PW50, amazing.
Right.
Amazing.
Right on. So I guess we're gonna rock on to our next guest, and while I get the phone ready for that, Ken, you bring him in.
Mr. Brian Clock, Clockworks. So I know that he had a really close relationship with Arlen as well. Also a hamster, and developer, creator, innovator of the Flare windshield. But just a great guy. Got to ride with him several years now up to the Quail, and looking forward to hearing what he has to say about Arlen.
Hello?
Brian, what's up, buddy? You're live with Chris, Ken, and Heather.
Perfect. How are you guys tonight?
Good, man. I'm sorry we're running late, but as you can imagine, everybody has these incredible stories and like, God, Susie.
I was sucked
Yaffe.
in. I was just listening. It was all good.
Awesome.
Susie
I'm a
Yaffe
fan.
just posted on
Pretty
social
simple.
media
That's
that
actually
she's
Paul, I think.
yeah, God. It's awesome for us, dude. Like this has just been such an honor to be part of this and hear these stories and be able to share this stuff. We thank you guys so much.
Well, let me start with my fanboy story.
Go ahead.
Dude.
So I'm in Daytona. It's 1990, and Arlen's got the big red Ferrari bike.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
so it's got Ferrari side panels on it. It's got a big wide car tire, dual superchargers, square headlight of all things, and thing just looks crazy, right? And I'm standing there staring at it, and Arlen walks over, and I don't really know who he is. And he looks at me and he goes, "What do you think?" I go, "This thing is just unbelievable. I've never seen anything like it." And he's like, "Where are you from?" I said, "From South Dakota." He goes, "Oh, really? We go to Sturgis every year." He goes, "I'll bet that was a cold ride out here." I'm like, "Yeah, it was actually." And he looked at me and he goes, No, I'm joking. Like, you didn't really ride here, did you?" I said, "Yeah. It's March. It was 20 degrees when I left. It's cold."
Oh my God.
And he goes, "What were you riding?" I told him it was an FXR. He goes, "I love FXRs." And I thought, oh, that was so cool, you know? And then I walked away and I'm like, oh my God, that was him. You know, because I'd seen the magazines and I paid attention. I just wasn't putting it all together, you know?
Sure.
And then fast forward to my first FXR, and I've got it in the bike show in Sturgis, years 92, I'm guessing. And I'm outside looking at what was, I think, called the Mona Lisa. It was a purple bike that could go completely stripped down, cool little softail thing. But then it could have these skirts on it, right? And so it could look like a full skirted, you know, body bike, right? And I'm checking it out. I'm crawling around. I'm looking at all the fasteners and all the brackets underneath it outside the snow fence that they had up there in the Sturgis City Park. And this guy walks up behind me. He goes, "Did you find what you're looking for?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I was just checking out this bracket right here." And I'm like, "Oh, no." And he goes, "Nice T-shirt." Well, I've got an Arlen Ness T-shirt on. It's Arlen Ness. And I'm like, "Man, I'm so sorry." He goes, No problem." He goes, "Anything I can answer for you?" I said, "No, I actually got it figured out now." And he's like, "Oh, well, that's cool. What are you building?" I said, "Well, I built that FXR in there." And I pointed inside the fence, and my purple bike was in the show. And he said, "Oh, that's awesome." I said, "Yeah." I said, "You can clearly see I'm a big fan. I've got a ton of your parts on there. Someday I'd love to get a photo with you." And he goes, "Well, let's go do it right now." I mean, he had to walk back down to the entrance, back in behind the fence, over into the park. And he's like, "No, let's go do it right now." Well, the crazy thing is Corey was there with him, and Arnie Arujo, who's a friend of his. Arnie had this FXR that was painted like a parrot, and it was just this crazy, colorful thing. And I'm like, no, these guys are waiting for you." He goes, "That's fine. They'll wait. They're my friends. We'll be all right." And I thought, unbelievable. This guy's talked to me twice in a period of 2 years and has absolutely taken more time than I ever expected to just hang out. Now here I am in the motorcycle industry, and I can honestly say there's two gentlemen that taught me how to be like that. And it's Donnie Smith and Arlen Ness.
Well, Brian, you said something earlier, and first I have to tell you real quick. Paul Yaffe said that was the convertible. The Mona Lisa had the open back fender so you could see the tire. So I had to enter that.
Thanks for the correction, Paul.
But
I stand corrected.
you actually said this perfect earlier when I was talking to you. You said that there were two gentlemen in this industry that taught you to be a gentleman, and that was where I was getting my reference about how Arlen would approach problems with the industry, and that was from conversation with you about becoming a gentleman under their influence.
Yeah, I was upset one time. I was in Daytona, and we were at the Rat's Hole bike show, and this guy had built this bike. And, of course, my bike wasn't done because I was planning on finishing it for Sturgis. And I'm like, oh, that sucks. Like, that was my thing. That was my idea. I was going to paint my bike like this. And Arlen looked at me at that moment. He said, you know what? Do it anyway. Do it anyway. He goes, put your blinders on, Brian, and just do it Brian's way. He goes, it doesn't matter if everybody painted a bike orange or blue or purple or did this idea or did that idea. Show them how you do it your way. And he goes, if you put your blinders on and just keep running, someday the money will come.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, wow, just, I mean, there'd be times when people, copy your idea or do what you think was your deal, right? And they, that those words would come back to me. Just do it your way, Brian. Put your blinders on. You got this. And it was Arlen-Ness speaking in my head always, time and time and time again.
Yep.
The first time we were going to do a bagger for the biker build-off, Michael Lichter and I sat in a Mexican restaurant for 3.5 hours and discussed why Michael said that would be not probably my best idea.
Yeah.
Yeah. And when we got up and left, Michael said, you know what, Brian? You've convinced me. Go for it. I'm like, what? He goes, no, I think you got this.
Really?
I'm like, all right, perfect. But that was one of those blinder moments where here I am trying to talk to Michael Lichter and convince a guy who's seen 40 years worth of cool that I got a good idea.
Yeah. Yeah, Michael's a hard sell, man.
And then, well, he's always been there for me. And it was just like Arlen-Ness believing in me. And, I have to say hats off to, Corey, Zach, Max, Bev, for sharing, Arlen with the rest of the world.
Yeah.
I mean, my story isn't unlike anybody else's story in the world. Everybody's an Arlen fan. And everybody's had that interaction. Everybody who's chimed in tonight, made a comment, has met him somewhere, seen him somewhere, and he spent as much time with them as he did with me.
Yep.
Like, I was looking back, and I've known that guy for 29 years, and he's just as good to everybody else in the world.
Mm-hmm.
That's amazing to me. How do you do that?
Well, and it's pretty astounding, like having those relationships in your life, when they kind of start, you don't realize the impact that they're going to have, right? And then over the years, you kind of like you're doing right now, and like I'm sure you've done before, you realize like, wow, that person like shaped part of who I am.
Yep.
Well, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, it was 2007. We had won the biker build-off in 2006 with the bagger. I come up to Arlen and Corey's semi in Sturgis, and I'm just a fan, just checking stuff out. Arlen's like, hey, Brian, how are you doing? Come on in. So I step up into the semi with him, and there's this young man walking outside, kind of pacing back and forth. And this is before everybody had a cell phone. So, he still had a real camera, and he could tell he wanted to get a picture, right? And I said, Arlen, I think that young man wants to take a picture. And Corey, God bless him, he was in a hurry to get to the airport. And he's like, Dad, we got to get home. The flight's we got to go. We got to get to Rapid City. And he goes, you know what, Corey? Not right now. Let's go out and take a picture with this guy. And I was like, wow. Here he is, a father in a teaching moment to say, no, we're going to be fine. Let's go out here and take this photo. It's going to take just a minute, but this might be the photo the kid wants, right? Walked outside, and the guy says, hey, Brian, will you be in the picture? And Arlen turned and laughed. He goes, "You wanted your picture, not mine." And that's who Arlen was. He would shine the light on somebody else every given moment. It wasn't that he didn't want to win. It wasn't that he didn't want to build the best bikes or the coolest things or set the trend. I mean, clearly he wanted to be the peacock in the room. Look at the bikes that he built.
Right.
He's good at it, right? But given the chance, he would turn the spotlight on you.
Yeah.
And the more he gave away, the more he got, is how I feel. It's like the more he gave away, the more people are like, that guy's the best. Even if they didn't agree with the color choice, they didn't agree with how he built it, there was no denying he was the best.
Yeah, and that's, you and I have the opportunity to have several conversations when we're together about the changes in the industry today and the attitudes and stuff with the benefit and the deterrent of social media. But those qualities, those values are things that we need more of. We could have all benefited with a little more influence from gentlemen like Arlen Ness.
Well, and I look at all the young guys out there, right? You're going to go through those phases where you think, oh, this guy's building something like I'm building, or I can't believe he did that. And it turns into an ego thing. And yet, if Donnie and Arlen and Dave would have put the ego in front, they wouldn't have maintained a friendship for 40 years.
Right.
You know, and guys like Paul Yaffe and I are just fortunate to step, into 25 years with it, Yeah. It's unbelievable. I'll remember, so the first time we came out with the flare windshield, I'm at the Drag Specialties show, the MVP thing in Janesville, Wisconsin, and the show's actually held in Madison or whatever. So we're in Madison in the Monona Terrace, and I'm kind of nervous because I've just come out with parts, right? And I'm set up across from Corey Ness. And I'm like, wow, And Corey's fairly quiet, and I hadn't talked to him nearly as much as I had Arlen. At one moment, there's nobody around, and Corey walks over and he goes, "Good job on that windshield." I said, "Oh, thanks. I appreciate that." He goes, "No, you killed it."
Yeah.
I hadn't even hardly sold any, And he's like, "No," he goes, "I wish I would have thought of that." He goes, "That's a home run." I'm like, "What?" He goes, "I'm telling you, I wish I would have thought of that. That is a great idea. That is a sexy looking windshield. That's going to be a hit." Yeah. And I was like, wow. So, to your point earlier, Ken, about how Arlen definitely lit the torch, and Corey, and on to Zach and on to Max. And he knew before I even knew that It was, boom, nice job. You hit the home run. I wish I would have done it.
Well, and it's so rare, in this industry, for people to dish out compliments like that. It just doesn't happen that often, and I wish it would happen more often. I always, when I have something that comes up in my mind that I'm like, hey, I should text this person or call this person and tell them, that I like, now I actually try to act on that instead of just thinking about it. 'Cause sometimes it makes all the difference in somebody's day,
Well, I think that's a good point, Ken, and I think that's one thing we can learn from Arlen's legacy is look at how many people commented on your show tonight.
Yeah.
Look at how many people are commenting worldwide. Like Corey said, 5 million people read this story about his dad.
Yeah.
Don't sit down on the sideline and be a voyeur. If you think that guy's bike is cool or his paint job was awesome or you loved his handlebars, say something. Be part of the conversation. Share his picture. Share his story. Get in there. Get involved, because at the end of the day, social media is designed to make us a better community, not to polarize us and have us be just voyeurs and watch the world go by.
Well, and that's what it takes to ever be one of the great ones. I'm not sure you'll ever know you arrive at it, but you and I, Brian, were both privileged enough to be invited to speak for the anniversary that they're putting together for JP Cycles, and And we talked at length about the fact that was who John was, and John was another one of the great ones that, like, he gave those most important bits of encouragement at exactly the right time, and that's what you're talking about with Arlen, is right when you need it, right when you need another shot of, do I have another day of this shit in me,
Right. I remember going to Arlen's shop on 14th Street, and bars on the windows. Well, guess what? In South Dakota, we don't have bars on the windows. And I'm like, what is this? And I'm just like, and they're like, yeah, this is not the best neighborhood. I'm like, oh, okay. I didn't know that, right? I didn't understand this. And he's like, yeah, come on upstairs. And I'm telling you, there was a set of steps and like a board, basically, to roll these bikes up. I don't even know how they got them up there. It was crazy. I wish I would have asked Corey earlier when you guys were on, because when I think about that, it's like, that was amazing. And now to go from that little shop and from being a great bowler and a mailman, right, to being a worldwide brand.
Oh my God.
That is respected because not necessarily of the parts, but because of the person behind those parts. At the end of the day, people still buy from people. Don't forget that.
Well, Brian, I think you'll be pleased to know that many of the people watching right now feel very much the same way about you. George Dinsman from Chaos Cycles. Brian is one of the guys that seems to always be in the dirt with all of us. Even when you can see his big rig in the parking lot, he's never acted better than any of us, a lot like Arlen. Darren, I've known Brian for a while now. Not only is he a genuine person, but he's truly sincere when he looks you in the eye and talks. He's very caring, and I've learned a lot from being his friend. And that's just two of the very many that think you are an amazing human being, because you do take the time. So I hope you're...
So Arlen's work stuck.
Yeah. It rubbed off on you.
For sure.
Well, thanks a lot, Heather. I thought I was going to make it all the way through this thing without being emotional.
Oh, buddy.
I feel like, I used to be scared to share my emotion. And one time I was with Donnie Smith and having a tough time with some stuff. And Donnie's like, why don't you just stay at the house tonight? I went to his house and I slept on the couch, and we warmed up some leftover chili in the fridge. And if you didn't know it, Donnie Smith has a hell of a green thumb. There's plants all over his house, and he's got gardening books and all kinds of cool stuff. And I thought, geez, I can't believe I'm here right now, right?
Yeah.
And when Arlen passed, I just, I had a hard time earlier in the week talking to Billy down in Daytona, and Billy's like, the boys aren't going to be here, and I just want you to know. And I'm like, okay. He's not doing very good. And I thought, oh, it's so hard, I can't even imagine. And then, how his family's feeling and how tough that is. And then Bob McKay passed, and Bob was a gentleman. He always fed into me. So two hamsters that were true gentlemen and true good guys and great builders that were active on social, and their stuff was out there and people were following them, pass away. And man, it's like your heroes are leaving you. And then in Daytona, we had the conversation at 40th anniversary of J&P about John Parham.
Yeah.
And I thought, wow, this just lights the fire in me even more so that when I think of something, I have to go do it. And this week I went over to the local Mitchell Tech Power Sports here. They were at Donnie Smith's show, and they did a nice bike, right? But they did a terrible job on social media. So I called them and I said, can I come over and just show those guys some pointers for about a half an hour? And they're like, oh, that'd be great, Brian. So I come over, and man, those kids are just listening with, gazelle intensity. They're watching you. They're ready. And I'm like, I'm sure I looked at Arlen the same way, And so I just encourage people to, man, if there's that kid in your area, if you know somebody, even if you got that egomaniac, pull them aside and just say, dude, You built a great bike. It doesn't matter if you're first or second.
Yeah.
What matters is you're playing the game. Just be happy to be on the stage. And it's not about not wanting to win. It's not about participation trophies or anything like that. I'm just saying the great ones, the Arlen Nesses, like, he's the Rolling Stones of our industry. He wrote hit after hit after hit. And then he'd make a flop, something that didn't even make sense to people. And he'd go back and hit another one and hit another one, you know? It's possible. You can still do it. I don't think you're going to be able to do it like Arlen Ness. I mean, when you think about it, the guy started before he was 20 years old. He was almost 80 when he passed, right? 79 years old, and 60-some years he was doing this. And the other thing that people need to take note of is he's married to the same lady for 59 years.
Right.
That should tell you something about the quality of that guy.
Yep.
Yeah, for
or
sure.
just Bev stamina, one of the two.
I'm gonna say that it was his patience, and I'm only saying that because I'm far enough away from my wife that she can't physically hurt me.
Either that or she was a saint.
Yeah.
That's what I'm afraid it was. Bev just probably applied for sainthood early.
Based on the creative mind and knowing the creative mind, she was a saint.
Yeah, I'm sure, Heather. You know him too well.
You know, Brian, I got to say something, though, like, because I just wrote about, I think it was me, you, and Billy I talked about in an editorial just recently, and I wrote this thing about we were young once. And I just wrote it. I just wrote it because I talked about Billy and watching Billy go around Sons of Speed and the different level of responsibility he has with his life now with Sons of Speed and, you know, children and wife and everything else. And I talked about seeing you, you know, at the Jack Daniels bike launch. And, you know, I shared the stories of, like, we were young once, you know, and, like, how we raced the streets and we raised hell. And, like, it seems like overnight that now not only have we taken this place where, you know, we're starting to be responsible for more of this, but now a lot of our heroes are passing away and they're leaving us a legacy, but they're also leaving great responsibilities, like teaching the next group how to be gentlemen.
Absolutely. And I think, you know, that's just part of the deal. I think that, you know, anybody who's gone to Donnie Smith's show, for instance, right, has seen Donnie stand there in the middle of the room and shake hand after hand after hand and take picture after picture after picture for 12 straight hours of show, right? And then he goes out and celebrates his birthday with everybody, you know? And Arlen's the same guy. I mean, he stood at the Quail Gathering fighting cancer, did an interview with Wayne Carini for Velocity or whatever TV show it was on stage getting interviewed by Gordon McCall and the guys at the Quail. And then at the end was presenting, you know, a Builder's Choice trophy and that kind of stuff, and was up there with Arlen and or with Corey and Zach, you know. And yet, I mean, it's not, you know, he's 3 years into fighting cancer, and he's still putting his passion for motorcycles, his passion for the industry, and his passion into fueling other people's dreams ahead of himself.
Yeah.
And the guy's amazing, you know.
Yeah, it's inspirational, you know. I think that's the bottom line, is that I think that's a huge takeaway from this, you know, is everybody's stories, you know, all kind of intersect in the fact that he was a gentleman and a true creative mind that, you know, that didn't compromise on that creativity, you know, and that you can really have both, you know. It doesn't have to be one or the other. And I think it's a great thing to kind of take with us, you know, and remember him for that.
Yeah, I asked Arlen one time, I said, Arlen, you know, you've traveled all over the world. You've ridden in South Africa. You've ridden in Italy. You know, where's the best place? If I have to shoot for something, what should I put on my list? He goes, well, that one's going to be easy for you, Brian. You live where the best riding is.
Right.
He goes, my favorite road in the world is Spearfish Canyon in Spearfish, South Dakota. And he goes, but you got to ride it at sunrise or sunset. Doesn't matter, but either one of those. And I remember coming down that road one day, heading into Spearfish, and I was trying to look for Corey's new bike. It was a four-head, you know, fueling
motored something, and I was trying to find that bike, and as I'm rolling down the road, here comes this big red bike coming at me, right? Here it is, the Ferrari bike that I thought was so cool, and Arlen has that thing leaned over on that big old flat car tire.
Hauling ass.
He's leaning as hard as he can, just bending over that straight edge, trying to go, turn, baby, turn, you know? And I was like, how cool is that? You know, it was only years later. Like, I mean, in 1983, I rode out to Sturgis, but it was 2 weeks before Sturgis, or a week before Sturgis or something. No, it was after Sturgis. My parents said you can't be out there during Sturgis, right?
Yeah.
With my own bike. I've been going there since I'm 8 years old. So it's like I'm 52. So you can do the math. I go out there when I'm 17 years old on my own bike after Sturgis, and I'm sitting at this little bar thing, and we're just going to grab a Coke, and it was called Screamin' Elrods, and it was at the end of Spearfish Canyon right before the golf course. Mm-hmm. And there's these 3 bikes out there, and I'm like, wow, this stuff is so cool. I don't know whose Harleys these are, but if I could ever have a Harley, it would look like these right here. They all had the little cafe fairing on them. And in one of them, this hooded sweatshirt's rolled up and stuffed in the windshield area, and the logo across it's Arlen-Ness. And I thought, I got to figure out who this guy is, or where this bike comes from, or how do you even make something like this, you know? And that early thing tipped me off to, hey, I want to build some Harleys. You know, I love this stuff. And so, Arlen, Godspeed, my friend. You launched my career. I mean, you made it what it was. You made me want that. And I think there's so many people all across the world that can say the same thing.
Absolutely.
It sure seems like it with all the comments and everything that are coming in. I mean, it's astounding. So.
Yes, sir, Brian. Yes, sir. You're one of the good ones.
Yeah, you are.
Well, it makes it easy. I mean, Paul Yaffe's a friend of mine, and Michael Lichter's a friend of mine, and Dave Perowitz is a friend of mine. And so all these guys do such a great job, I think I wrote on there earlier when I was listening to Michael tell his story about the book, Michael said, Ryan, I'm shooting Arlen's bikes, up in Dublin at his new shop. I have a full studio set up upstairs on the second floor. If you could bring your bike out here, I could shoot it, and then we'd make it in time for whatever magazine wanted it, right? And I'm like, well, actually, we're going to be at the Custom Chrome show, and then right from there, we'll come up to Arlen's. I've never been at his new shop, right? I rolled up there, and I'm like, wow. I mean, if you haven't been to his place in Dublin, you need to go. It's
ridiculous. Yeah, it's so awesome.
I'm like, how do I get my bike up there? And Michael's like, go around the back. There's a concrete ramp that looks like you're driving into a parking garage. You could pull a truck and trailer up there. As I pull up the ramp on my bike, sure enough, there's Arlen's roll sitting over there. There's his sports cars. And here's Michael's studio that he's got set up, and he's shooting those 40 or 50 bikes for the book. And I get the bike shot. I rolled it over just out of the way, and it was a green bagger that we built at that time called the Benchmark Bagger. It's the same bike that launched our fender line.
Yeah.
A guy's walking along with Arlen, and he says something to him, and he's like, well, whose bike is that right there? He goes, I'll bet that kid right there knows. And so Arlen directed the guy right to me. The guy came over, and he goes, I'll give you this much money for that motorcycle right now. I'm like, it's not even mine. Like, I built it for a customer. I don't think it's for sale. And he goes, no, everything's for sale, kid. I'll give you this much money right now. It's more money than I'd ever been offered for a bike in my life from South Dakota. I guarantee you that. And yeah. I called Greg Wick, who is now, one of the board directors for the Hamsters, right? He wasn't at that time. And I said, Greg, this guy really wants your bike. And he's like, oh man, I haven't really rode it, Brian. He's like, sell it to him. So sure enough, I stayed at that guy's house that night, sold him the bike, but it was all because Arlen, he could have took him down to the floor and sold him any one of the cool things he had.
Yep.
Yeah.
that wasn't priority. He's like, no, you want that bike? Just go buy it from that kid right there.
Yeah, baby, because together we're better.
Yeah, he believed he knew more about collaboration. I mean, now it's like a thing, you know. It's like we're all better together, and everybody's collaborating on different things and different projects, and as they should.
Yeah.
Social media has and the connectivity has made that easier, but he did it by virtue of a handshake and friendships.
Mm-hmm.
For sure.
It's amazing.
That's how
amazing.
it should be.
For sure.
Oh, buddy, listen, I can't thank you enough for being on with us. I know we really
Thanks
kept
for
you.
having me, pal. That's all right.
We gave everybody a schedule tonight. We're like, oh, we'll be calling you by 10:30.
Yeah, it's fine. You're doing fine. You guys are up later. It's later for you than me.
Oh, but thank you so much. I really
thanks,
appreciate
Brian.
you helping us
It was
put
awesome
this
having
together.
you on. Great perspective.
No problem.
Great way to wrap it up.
Cheers to the gentlemen of the industry. Thank you, guys. Have a good night.
For sure.
Right on, Brian.
Thanks,
Thank
Brian.
you.
Bye.
So, man.
What a great way to close that. Brian was absolutely outstanding.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yeah, and so many people on social media. It's insane how much we get to see the outpouring of affection for each one of these guys, and you know, obviously the man of the hour, Arlen Ness. We do have one more photo montage that we want to run of Mr. Lichter's. So before we wrap up, we're gonna take a look at this last set of photos that memorialize Arlen Ness.
I really liked painting motorcycles. I really liked, you know, doing them, working on them, and the people and all the stuff. Make my living painting. So I did that for a while, and I got too busy, so I rented a little store on East 14th Street. I think I could get like 3 bikes in there or something. To go to the bike show, you'd have to redo it every year or have another bike. You couldn't put the same bike in. So I changed that bike probably 5 times.
So again, this is all credit to Michael Lichter for the great photos, and Mr. Connie's Forever Two Wheels interview with Corey and Arlen Ness from some time ago.
Yeah, and we'll probably try to post those individually too, so people can check them out on social media. We'll get them up on all the platforms.
So one more time, we want to thank everybody from the Ness family, Corey for coming on personally, and the whole family for giving us the opportunity to carry out this great honor. Michael Lichter for his tireless work. Each one of our guests, from Dave Pirwitz and Paul Yaffe, Brian Cluck especially, the great stories you guys all shared, letting us be part of this, and everyone on social media. You guys have shared the hell out of this, and I'm awful proud of what we did here tonight.
And I want to thank them. A lot of people on social media did share their own stories of Arlen or of Brian or of Dave. And thank you very much. So if you have a few minutes, take time to read through some of those comments, because there are a lot of stories there as well.
Yeah, for sure.
Remember, after the fact, if you are listening to this after the fact, because we put this out in podcast through Forever Two Wheels and MotoShopTalk.com, through iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, if you are listening to this, you can go back to the Facebook recorded version, and you can see all the comments and see everything that everyone's putting out. I do want to take care of one thing. We're going to be broadcasting something else special this Sunday. And before we let you guys go, I want to give you a little example of a new program we're working on. All you guys that have been following us are through our Grease and Gears Garage stuff, where we bring the stage out and have our builder buddies do examples of building custom stuff right in front of you. We're taking the show on the road, and here's a new little thing we're working on. Hey, this is Chris with Cycle Source Magazine's Grease and Gears Garage. I know where we've been. You guys have been following us for the last 3 years, dragging that tool trailer all over the country, and inviting our builder buddies up on stage to get into the hows and whys of motorcycle fabrication, and that was really cool, but we're working on something new now. Instead of taking the trailer to the show, we're going to go to the builder shop. This gives us the ability to see where these guys work in their comfort zone, and better than that, we get to see the shop down the street and the places where they hang out and that parts stash they don't want anybody to know about. First one of these, we're going to go today to Will Ramsey from Faith Forgotten Choppers, and Will's going to show us how to build an entire Faith Forgotten Choppers Springer front end. So stick around. This is a new thing we're calling the Greasing Gears Garage Roadshow. So that's this Sunday, March 31st, 12 p.m. Eastern. We're actually going to take that thing live, and it'll be our first episode of 4 that we have produced of those, and that's it. I'm not going to say anything else tonight.
Awesome.
Well, that's not entirely true.
You might say a thing or two.
So again, you can catch us every Thursday, 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time with our regular offering of Shop Talk, where we do the news. We have a guest on. We talk about the topics of the day, and it's generally 90 to 120 minutes.
Yeah, not 3 hours.
Yes.
Yeah, this was just too good. This was too good to keep
Yeah.
to 90 minutes. And remember, we do want your suggestions for guests. Somebody earlier had suggested Ron Finch. They would love to hear from
For
Ron
sure.
Finch.
Yeah, Finch would be great.
But one more time, we want to remind you guys that we are coming to you from the Russ Brown Studios now with our new sponsorship with Russ Brown. Shop Talk is being brought to you in part by Russ Brown Motorcycle Attorneys. You can check them online or through their social media at your convenience, and we thank them for helping us put together a hell of a show.
You bet.
So
I guess we're done.
I think that Steve Broyles says what's up. Scott Takis is in. Ray, love seeing you here, brother. Absolutely
Yeah, for
love it. Till we can get out there and check you out. And until we see all you guys at the show, I'm Chris.
And I'm Ken.
I'm Heather.
This is Shop Talk.